the entire competition was, give me a moment of the Rebbe. Give me a kiro from the Rebbe. Give me a non-kite to the Rebbe. That was the whole competition of Anash. People went on Shlichus at the end of the world just to get that one moment for the Rebbe. Because that one moment the Rebbe is Yekoram Mipninim. There's nothing in the world like that. There's nothing than that moment with the Rebbe. There's nothing like that.
I'm Yossi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Der Herr, an ongoing farbrengen about life as a Chassid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. Okay, Rabbi Greenberg, was machst du?
Baruch Hashem, how are you?
Baruch Hashem. I got a report that Alaska this year was the warmest winter. I know the Rebbe told you to unvarm in Alaska. I think you did it already. The Rebbe told you more than once, no?
Well, the Rebbe said it twice. The first time the Rebbe said it actually to Balabos, not to me directly. I mean, I was with the Balabos. I came with a couple, and she was Jewish and he was convert, and he converted in Crown Heights. And there is a whole story. I don't know if we should repeat that story. If you wanted to talk about that story, there's a whole story about this Balabos, which is an amazing example of the Rebbe's vision 50 years ahead.
What do you mean? Game. I think you have to say it because I heard the story, but I don't understand the whole.
That story is an amazing story because here you have two bochur, Shmuel Spritzer and Shmuel Langsam, who going to Alaska in 1970, Tovshin Lamed. That was the first time the Rebbe sent Shluchim to Alaska. And Shmuel Spritzer was trying to go to Alaska before that, and the Rebbe didn't give permission. You could see everything is mechuven by Rebbe. Tovshin Ches, no. He asked for Tovshin Ches, the Rebbe said no. Tovshin Tes, no. Tovshin Lamed Chadakov came out of the Rebbe's room and he said, Lubavitch is going to Alaska. The Rebbe gave permission. And they went to Alaska, and it's amazing. They were here for 3 weeks. 1 week in Anchorage, in the big city, 1 week in Juneau, 1 week in Fairbanks. And they wrote to the Rebbe a duch from those 3 weeks. And when you read the duch today, 55 years later, it's like as if it was written today, because they described to the Rebbe, two young bochur, what is the matzah of Yiddishkeit in Alaska. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, and I wish I would have the duch when I went on Shlichus. But anyway, I didn't even know about this duch. You know how it goes in Chabad, that bochur went and they gave the duch into Merkez and it was laying somewhere in
But what's so important about the duch? What does it say in the duch?
So in the duch, they tell the Rebbe how they came to Anchorage and they went to the Jewish center in Anchorage, the only Jewish center there was. And there was this person, this Balabos, he was the president of the temple.
But he wasn't Jewish.
He wasn't Jewish. His wife was Jewish because nobody else wanted to be the president, because who wants the pain to run the whole place? So he was the president of that Jewish center. It wasn't even yet associated with a certain movement. It was just the place of Jews to come. And what's interesting, what's unique about this, because he was not Jewish, he opened the center for them. He said you could do whatever you want. You could put on tefillin, do whatever you want. And the other Balabos was Perry Green, who opened the home for them. Now, after a week in Anchorage, they went to Fairbanks. This Balabos wrote to the Rebbe a beautiful letter, a typed letter, and I have the letter. In Tovshin Lamed, he writes to the Rebbe how impressed he was with the bochur who came, how they represent the values of Judaism, how proud he was with them. And he wishes one day he could be part of this. And then he quotes to the Rebbe all kinds of lines from the Mishnayos that he knew that what represent the values of Judaism, how the bochur represented those values that they. It was just an amazing letter, thanking the Rebbe for sending them all the way from New York to Alaska. Now the bochur have no idea that he sent a letter to the Rebbe. They come back 3 weeks later from Alaska to New York. Shmuel Langsam is a relative of Benjamin Klein because he's from the same Rabbi Schusterman's family. Forgot exactly how, but he's from the Schusterman family. So Binyamin tells them, come into the office. The Rebbe wrote something for you guys. So he comes into the office, and Binyamin shows him the envelope of this balabos who wrote a letter to the Rebbe. And his name was a very strong non-Jewish name. His name was Erling Christensen.
Doesn't get more non-Jewish than that.
And under his name, the Rebbe wrote one word, Yehudi, ? So now, Shmuel Agnew says to Binyamin, we will write to the Rebbe, I'll report that he is not Jewish, but he wants to be Jewish, and his wife is Jewish, and he has a Jewish child, and so on and on. And then later, they wrote to the Rebbe report. The Rebbe didn't say anything about this. That was the only thing that the Rebbe wrote about, the old visit in Alaska. And then, what was interesting is that 21 years later, this is Tavshin Lamed. Tavshin Lamed, I was 5 years old. Tavshin Nun Aleph, I'm finally going. Tavshin Nun, we went here to check out this place in the summer of Tavshin Nun, and the Rebbe gave us, we asked the Rebbe if we have a tzoi from Rabbi Shalom Ber Levitten, the Shliach in Seattle, to go to Alaska, and should we be Misani, should we look into it, and should we go to Alaska? And the Rebbe wrote, and we asked the Rebbe Askama Bracha, should we be Misani there? The Rebbe made a little line under the word Askama Bracha, and Label showed me the line, and we knew that we were going. So we went to Alaska to check it out for a week. We came back, and then eventually we went on Shlichus, like 7-8 months later, we went to Shlichus in Tavshin Nun Aleph. And we come here, this balabas, we came here like 2 days before Purim to Alaska. And there was a Purim party waiting for us, and there was the whole community was waiting. And the only person who said to me, Shalom Aleichem, was this balabas. And I saw something unusual with him, because everyone said, hi, American. The only person who said, Shalom Aleichem.
Oh, he said the words, okay, yeah.
He said the words, Shalom Aleichem. And I was like, oh, what is this all about? And of course, a few days later, he came to my office, he sat me down to my house, and he said, told me the whole life story, how he's from Denmark, and during the Holocaust, he was a sailor, and he saw what the Nazis did to the Jews. He was so angry. When he came to New York, he jumped the border. He said, I'll never go back to Europe. And he started to hang out with some Europeans and Jewish kids, and she was a daughter of an Orthodox rabbi who passed away young. She was a Yisema, she was an orphan, and somehow they got involved, and they got married, and they ran away as far as they can from New York because the family was upset that she married out, and then they had a baby. With a baby, he said to her, well, the baby is Jewish, so I'm going to become Jewish. We're going to raise the kids Jewish. And he started to study, and he's the only person that when I came to Alaska, he had a Shas in English and a Mishnayos in English. He would get the Jewish press, he would read it from cover to cover. He was a very knowledgeable person, very interesting person. And so he sits me down and he tells me, for 20 years, I'm begging people to convert me, and you're going to convert me. And I said, I just came, yesterday from yeshiva. I'm not converting anybody. Not happening. And he was like putting pressure on me every week after week after week. And finally, I called Rabbi Marlo and I told him the whole story. And I said to him, what should I do? So Marlo said, if he knows everything and he really wants it, bring him. I'll do the conversion. I don't even know if Marlo ever did any conversions besides this conversion. And we actually, the conversion we made on King, the old mikveh on Kingston and Montgomery, then we did the conversion there, if you remember that old mikveh. So going back to the story, when I come to New York, I come to San Sanity with this balabas. By the way, there was a whole story related to that visit, which maybe I'll tell you later, with the Rebbe. So because I wrote to the Rebbe a letter from the airport that I'm bringing the balabas for Sunday for $, and that he's coming with me for the conversion.
What do you mean you wrote it from the airport? You faxed it from the airport?
I forgot to write to the Rebbe before I left that I'm bringing the balabas, and I know I'm going to come for Shabbos, and I'm going to come for farbrengen, I'm going to come with him for $. I want to write to the Rebbe. So on the way, either it was in Utah or it was in Minnesota, we found a fax machine, and I wrote to the Rebbe. And this was a few weeks after the sicha of Nissan.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll come back to that story. That's the famous story,
No, I don't
So
know about you.
I'll come
Okay.
back to it.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I come to New York, and I go on Kingston Avenue with this balabas, and Shmuel Spritzer comes by, and he sees me, and he looks at me. He knew I went to Alaska. Everyone
Yeah.
knew about it. And he looks at him. He says, "Oh my gosh, that's him." I said, "What do you mean that's him? What are you talking about? I had no idea what he's talking about." "Oh my gosh, that's him." So he takes me aside. He said, "Listen, he's the person the Rebbe wrote about him in Tovshin Lamed 21
Yehudi.
years ago, Yehudi question mark. And now he's coming to the Rebbe, and he's becoming a full-fledged, because he asked, I kept pushing him off. So I said, I'm not doing conversion. Then I said to him, we only do conversions in New York. So I'll fly in New York. I'll take the whole family with me. So I didn't know what to do. So I said, you know what? I only do Chabad conversions. So he said, what is a Chabad conversion? I said, with a hat and a surtuk. He said, I'll do it. So
You weren't expecting that, huh?
I didn't expect it, of course not. And finally, so we came to the Rebbe. So first, that morning we came like a few days before Shabbos. So I took him into 770. Rebbe used to come those days every day davening. So I put him with the bima, with the kriya bima. When the Rebbe comes in, the
In
Rebbe
the
says,
front,
"Look at
I say in
right
the
in
middle of shul.
the middle of shul."
Yeah.
The Rebbe came in. I was hiding, but I put him there himself. And the Rebbe came in, and the Rebbe like looked him up and down. And then when we came by Dallas, so the Rebbe, so I came by and I told the Rebbe that he is the person from Alaska that I brought here, and the Rebbe said, the Rebbe responded with a bracha, and then I said he helps us. After that, I said he helps us a lot. He really helps support the Chabad house. So the Rebbe said in Yiddish, you should continue supporting more. And then when I finished what I said to the Rebbe, the Rebbe gave him a dollar, and then the Rebbe turned to his wife, and the Rebbe started a whole sicha in English. And the sicha was, the nekuda was, the Rebbe said like this: Alaska is very far from here. The Rebbe pointed out, very far, like to denote. But Alaska is very far from here, and Alaska has a name, or gives a cold attention when people hear the word Alaska. But then
It
the Rebbe
calls
said,
attention.
no, it gives a cold attention.
Okay.
It makes people think of coldness. When you say the word Alaska, you think of coldness. And the Rebbe said, but to spread Yiddishkeit, you have to have a stronger temperature, which meant that to live in Alaska, you're in the homes, you have to have a stronger temperature to live here. So when it comes to Yiddishkeit, don't think of coldness, but the opposite. To spread Yiddishkeit even with stronger temperature, with stronger Warmkeit. That was the first thing the Rebbe said, the first time. And we saw the Rebbe with his balabos. And that was in English, and I've explained the message of Alaska to the world. But the Rebbe's message of Alaska is to have a stronger temperature in order to overcome the coldness. That was the one thing. And then later, because of this balabos, typically when you go on Shlichus, you don't come back 3 months later to 770 with your whole family.
You're not
And then,
typical, no?
and so, but because of this story, what Hashlosh Goche Prat is that this story brought me to the Rebbe every 3 months. So first we had the conversion, and according to the ultimate halacha,
According to Chabad, a conversion. Yeah.
you have to wait 3 months between the conversion and the wedding.
Okay.
So typically today there are eterim that with such an age, with people, he was already in the 60s, that you could make it the day after. But we did with Marlo, we did it the real way, the ultimate way. So it took 3 months. So after 3 months, we came back for his wedding, and the entire family, whole family from New York, came to the wedding, and they were all judges and lawyers, and they were all secular, and he, the non-Jew, is becoming Chabad. Verstehst? He's with the surtuk, getting married by the Rebbe. And they are all the Jews, they are all the secular Jews. They all came. And we were supposed to have a beautiful chuppah in the chutzner, in the yard between the 770 and the library, in the backyard.
The courtyard, the chutney.
Where in the chutzner where usually the sukkah is. But that, an hour before the chuppah, we heard that the chief rabbi of Israel, Mordechai Eliyahu, is coming to the Rebbe. The Rebbe is going to the library
This is Numbez.
This is the base, yeah. The Rebbe is going to welcome him in his office in the library, and not in the Rebbe's room, because the Rebbe's room had a bed, it couldn't accept guests. So we had to move the entire chuppah and fold all the chairs, because the Rebbe is going to walk there, and we went back to have the chuppah in front of the Rebbe's room, So B'shas the Rebbe had Rabbi Eliyahu in his office, and the entire Anash and all the bochur were there. Was a huge crowd. We had the chuppah at the time, and we
The
had
same
the Rebbe's
exact time.
the same exact time. And the microphone is you hear it all chatzah. And all of the guests from New York who came from the family, all the secular Jews who all came, and they were all called. They all crowd. He thought everyone came for this wedding, and it was really, and that Shabbos before the wedding, we went to the Rebbe to get a bottle of mashke for the wedding, and the wedding
He went up, or you went
I
up?
went with him together. That was the only time I went for a bottle of mashke,
You made the announcement.
And actually, it happened that Shabbat. There were like 50 bottles of mashke. And there was like and it took time to get his balbos. He was in the 60s. He was not used to climbing on benches in 70. So took time to get him there. But we finally got him there. And the Rebbe was almost to a point the Rebbe was waiting for us. Because everyone already got, and he's still schlepping. I'm taking him from table to table, jumping on people's heads till we got to the but Lepoil Baruch Hashem. It was and the Rebbe gave him a mashke, the Rebbe gave a brocha, and then we also given again by dollars that Sunday, and he gave the Rebbe album from our activities, and the Rebbe said thank for the album, and again the Rebbe gave us a very strong brocha at that time. The Rebbe said to me that the Shlichus will sein b'atzlacha rabba. It was a very special brocha at the time, the second time. Then the third time we went was the same year. We went for Chavei Shvat because it was the Kinnus Shlichus, and somehow we decided to go the whole family. And we went it was a hergesh. We didn't know why we decided to do it. We just were here, the whole family, twice already.
What was there saying? It was the fourth yard side, right?
It was a 40-yard side, but I don't know. We decided to go the whole family, and this was the last time we saw the Rebbe before the stroke, and we went by the Rebbe. And we didn't, of course, we had no balabos with us. We didn't plan to talk to the Rebbe or anything special. But the Rebbe stopped us.
When the Rebbe, it's by dollars or by the
by
Sunday?
dollars, by Sunday. The Rebbe stopped us, and there was every time we went with our children, the Rebbe asked of every one of the children, "Fortech in Alaska," and even asked and he gave a bochur to my wife. So a very special bochur. And then we left already. And behind us was Jacobson, our cousin, Boris Jacobson's wife, Boris Jacobson's wife with his.
She's
Rabbi Evemelkov's daughter.
Course, yeah.
And they had a little child, Obshernish, and they were behind us, and the Rebbe already started to give her $1. And then the Rebbe stopped, and the Rebbe, like the way the Rebbe would turn, and the Rebbe screamed loud, because we were already getting tachten. The Rebbe screamed loud, so machen dorten. So we turned around, we ran back, and the Rebbe smiled, the whole room filled up with the Rebbe's smile. And the Rebbe said, machen dorten waren. And we were standing froze, because it was such an unusual, it was like a real, like Rabbi Gorner called my shwager Yossi that day after Dallas, and he said to him, "Oh, the Rebbe is Alaska has a special chvivus beim Rebbe."
So I was about to say. So the Rebbe had there's something about Alaska that I mean, it's always like Chabad is all over the world. From Alaska, it's always part of the.
Actually, it's interesting that in Sefer HaShluchim, the Sefer HaShluchim that came out, so there is the Hagdama, the introduction to the Sefer HaShluchim.
Yeah.
In the Hagdama, for some reason in English, they wrote from El Paso to Anchorage. The Rebbe was Magia that page. There's a few agos in that. It
happens to be your brother's a Shliach in El Paso.
Yes. So, but the Rebbe has a special koch in.
But the Rebbe's Magia, the Pesach Davar, the forward.
There's a few agos on that very same page, like a line after that, where it says from
the Rebbe
pastor.
read that.
The Rebbe read it, and the Rebbe saw it. And so the Rebbe had a special chvivus to merchakim, to shluchim in the far corners of the world, Katzvei Tevel. And there's a very famous farbrengen from Purim Tov Shechov Ches, where the Rebbe talks about it in length, of the famous story with Shmuel Chefer, the whole story. So the Rebbe...
What's the story of Shmuel Chefer?
The whole story with Shmuel Chefer, that he... Shmuel Hever was the head of the Besrifki in Israel, the Menayel, and he was a member of our shul in Bnei Brak. He lived where I lived. I grew up as a child with him, and he was one of the biggest. He lived in Bnei Brak all his life, and he was a speaker. He was one of the greatest speakers of Chabad, in Chabad events or out events. He was one of the machas of Chabad in Israel, and we grew up as children, with him in his presence. So he always told the story about how in Tovshin Chavches he came for Purim to New York to be by the Rebbe. He couldn't go for Tishrei because Tishrei is when school starts and he has to do registration and the whole thing in the classrooms. So anyway, so he decided he'll go for Purim. So he comes for Purim Tovshin Chavches to New York. He comes for the farbrengen. He comes for Purim. Rabbi Chodakov calls him in. Rabbi Chodakov said to him, "You have a special Shlichus from the Rebbe. What's the Shlichus? You're going to travel to Minnesota for Purim." He came to the Rebbe for Purim. You're going to travel to Minnesota for Purim, and then you'll meet Moshe Feller, and with him together you'll travel to Ames, Iowa, the little town in Iowa, and there is a Jew there. There's a Russian Jew there who became frum, and he asked that someone should come to read the Megillah, and he'll call all the Jews in Ames, Iowa, to come to the Megillah reading. So you will read the Megillah for them, and you'll go with Moshe Feller. You'll read the Megillah. Moshe Feller will translate in English, and he'll explain. And he's like, "I came to New York to the Rebbe. The Rebbe is sending me away to a little town." And he went there, and of course the Rebbe said so. He went there, and he said he was shocked because two Israelis walked over to him as they were married to non-Jews, and there was he always says how they told him, yes, they are very into Judaism. So I said they are very into Jews or very into Judaism. Anyway, and after that, so he said every one of them was like intermarried. There was nobody there, both of them were Jewish. Small community. Now there is a Shliach there. Jacobson is a Shliach. There is a campus city. Yeah. But it's even today, it's a small town compared, And anyway, so he comes back. So the next morning he had to fly back to New York. So he had no minion, to come to, and he flies back to New York, and half a day. So he comes to New York. It's already the afternoon. He didn't hear the Megillah yet. And he goes to his brother's house in Williamsburg, and someone read the Megillah for him. And finally, he ran to the farbrengen. He came to the farbrengen, and he's thinking to himself the whole day, why was I punished? I came from Israel. Those days to fly from Israel, what that meant to fly from Israel to New York. It's a big deal. It's huge. And I'm coming to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe sends me away to a little town. I mean, the Rebbe could have sent two bochur there. Right. Me and Moshe Feller need to go to a little town, and then comes the farbrengen. And after the Maimon, the Rebbe started all sicha. And the Rebbe started to explain the Rebbe spoke about Chassidus, that Mayor Besheva Be'esri Medina, that he had to show his malchus in all the 127 countries. The Rebbe explained Chassidus, Mishach, Bereishis Shalai, the Eibishter. And you have to, and when do we know that the Eibishter is running the world? When you see it in every one of the 127 countries. And then the Rebbe started speaking about the shluchim in the small towns in the Katzvi table. And the Rebbe started to speak about that people could ask the question, why the Rabbeim put so much effort in going to small towns in Ekwelt, where there is maybe one family, 3 families, even the same money, the same energy you could do in a big city and affect more Jews. The Rebbe saw a long sicha, beautiful sicha about Shlichus. The Rebbe started to give several answers. The Rebbe says, first of all, in a big city, there are all the Jews who could help them. So here it's a mitzvah because nobody else will go to the small town. And there is Ashgocha Potis, if you heard about the standards and need, you have to go, you have to go and do it. And then, after all the explanations, the Rebbe says, in a big city, there are many Jews who could help them, but in this place, if not you, who's going to help them? And then And then the end, the Rebbe says, which seems like the ultimate answer, the Rebbe says that this is the year when the Rebbe spoke about the Hoyo Bayemahu, he talked about Shefer Godel of the Pasuk. The Rebbe in that year, after the 6-day war, the Rebbe explained that there are 2 psukim to be say in the Shefres in Rosh Hashanah. One pasuk is Voye Bayemahu, you talk about Shefer Godel, Ubo Evdim Beretz Ashur, Medochem Ad Mitzrayim, Yishtar Hashem Ba'ar Kenet B'Yerushalayim. That's one pasuk. And then there is another pasuk of that it says that there be a shefer godel b'saras teman. So the Rebbe said that the one pasuk speaks about what the Eibishter will do, the big shefer, the Eibishter will waken up the nations of the world. That's World War I, World War II. That was the farbrengen after the 6 Day War that was spoken in Tishrei, Toshich of Ches. And then shefer godel is about the 6 Day War. That what happened during the 6 Day War, that many Jews all over the world were awakened to Yiddishkeit. But the farbrengen Purim Chav Ches, the Rebbe says, that when do you know that you're getting ready for Mashiach? When you deal with the Ovdim and the Nidachim.
So dafke and merchakim, that it's ashra.
When you dafke those who are far beruchnis and far begashmis, when you deal with the Ovdim and Nidachim, then you know you're dealing.
But 1 second, but the first shluchim, but there were shluchim to big cities, no? In the beginning.
Of course there was shluchim. There was, the first shluchim was to Morocco, which is in a certain, in a certain way at the time when most Jews left Morocco, as they were left without Rabbonim, without everything. So Morocco was definitely a mokem nidach to a certain degree.
You see,
obviously the Rebbe wants shluchim everywhere. There's no question about it.
But there's also Zehirus from the Rebbe, at least then. I remember once, as I was in Yeshiva in Miami, they, I think I heard from Rabbi Shapiro, from Rebbe Shapiro, that they asked the Rebbe about opening of the Yeshiva Gedela, and the Rebbe said, I don't remember the Lashon, but the Tanai, that there is no other yeshiva that exists already in Miami. And there wasn't, so you see Taka, this thing, but yeshiva, but there is one there already. Let's open up a place that doesn't have, I think that's connected to the Ikerim from...
So the Rebbe said at the end of that sicha, the Rebbe said to everyone, the Rebbe said like this, as by Purim it says, Kol ha'peshid yad nesim lei. The Rebbe said, who has what to give? The shluchim are in the merchakim. And they will give to all the nechsholim who are sitting here and do not want to move and go out of here and go to Shlichus. So the shluchim will give them to the nechsholim. And then the Rebbe said, all the shluchim should say l'chaim. And then he turned around to Shmuel Hefer, and he showed him to stay on a big cup. And Shmuel Hefer felt that the Rebbe said all sicha to him. Like the Rebbe was mezake him, even though he was a yid from Bnei Brak who was always going to shul with a Megillah in his hand, like the Abalabos, a yid. And the Rebbe was mezake him with the Sichos to feel the feeling of being in a little town and dealing with Jews that are intermarried and giving them the Megillah. That's the Rebbe said, when do you know the Mashiach is coming? When you start to deal with the Nidachim and the Evdim, when you find them and you bring them back.
I have a question. I think those years, it's very stark asis about Shlichus. In those years, at the end of the Chafs, there's stark asis about Shlichus. You don't see it so much in the Lamas. Why do you think?
Well, it depends if...
I think in the Mems, when you're a Bach, I think the Rebbe started speaking it again a lot, right?
But when the Rebbe spoke in my years, for example, when the Rebbe said, Yutes Kislev, Tov Shemem Zayin, when the Elam was singing very strong, the Dan Notzach, and after that the Rebbe said, the Dan Notzach, Elech Vekevish, Kol Pino Sheba Elam. Then what is the Dan Notzach? The Rebbe tells the Elam, you're singing the Dan Notzach, you should know, what is the Dan Notzach? Elech Vekevish, Kol Pino Sheba Elam, to go conquer every corner in the world. So the Rebbe did start again to speak about it in a very strong way, in an unusual way. From the Mems, it started in the Shlichus.
The Mems Zayin, the Rebbe started speaking about Batei Chabad.
Right. After the Dan Notzach, immediately after the Dan Notzach,
after the Dan Notzach?
A huge campaign of Batei Chabad, to establish Batei Chabad. That was the Shabbos Vayigash, the Rebbe started speaking about in a very strong way. About Vayigash and Vayichi were the two Shabbos, and the Rebbe spoke one Shabbos about the Achonet to be in Beis Hamikdash, that the Dan Notzach is the new step to build the Beis Hamikdash by building Batei Chabad. And the next Shabbos, Vayichi, we spoke about what is Vayichi, that the Yosef, that some of Yosef are with us, that's a chizuk in Golos. So the Rebbe
you don't know why, you don't have any hasbara from the Rebbe upon him, or something that you think, why the Rebbe didn't speak about it so much in the Lamed.
Well, I don't know what does that mean so much. The Rebbe spoke, the Rebbe spoke more about Mifsoim, which Mifsoim is another form of Shlichus. That's how the Rebbe got all Anash involved in Shlichus. Mifsoim is a all other form the tanken of the mifzoim. That's where the Rebbe got the bochur and Anash. So it's it's another form of shlichus that the Rebbe started in addition to shluchim. The Rebbe almost like took a new initiative how to mobilize every one of Anash, men, women, and children into the work of a fotza.
And by the way, the Batei Chabad, when the Rebbe was speaking strong about Shlichus, the Rebbe also tied it in. It means that Beis Chabad Kipshute, but also the whole mitzvah was about making every home a Beis Chabad and making every room a Beis Chabad. So
that's in the mems.
Yes, I'm saying even when the Rebbe in the mems is speaking about Shlichus, he's
Right.
making it applicable.
To everyone.
Like the Rebbe said, you could be one of the sichos of the Shlichus. The Rebbe says, "Divas hamazeche given their shluchim rasmim," but then the way the Rebbe gets into the whole. No, he does the opposite. The Rebbe in the sichos, I'm thinking about the Rebbe does the opposite. The Rebbe speaking about the concept of shlichus is negate to anybody, to everybody. In the end, the Rebbe says, "For befrat, those that are shluchim rasmim, official shluchim." So
and you could see it. You could see that if you familiar yourself with the work of the Rebbe, that there were many accomplishments that Chabad accomplished through people who were not shluchim rasmim.
I saw there's a book. I forgot what the book is called. Like it's like an encyclopedia of about Judaism. I picked it up. I found it somewhere from the Lamids, and it has there's like a bunch of pages about Lubavitch, a bunch of pictures of the Rebbe. Those that were I forgot the name of it, but I have it at home. But they have a list of all of the shluchim, all the Chabad around the world. There's a Dr. Lukens is on there. There's people that have worked in a Monorthodox shul that are on there, like Vunan Meken. There's this representative, that representative, and not necessarily. I think today it would be later.
The greatest accomplishments, major accomplishments of Chabad were done through people who you would never believe that they are connected to Lubavitch. And they were able to be in such places that no Lubavitcher, no Shliach was able to be there. So the Rebbe there are countless stories of people who have been in positions where they was, for example, I'll give you one example. I want to first tell you the story about my zettel from that visit from here. I told you before. So when I wrote to the Rebbe from the airport that I'm going, this was 3 weeks after the famous sicha of Nissan, Tavshin and Aleph, Tavshin, where the Rebbe spoke about Ich getan alles was ich ken and tut alles was ich ken. At that time, there was a tzoeb among Chassidim that all the Chassidim should write to the Rebbe a letter that they all accept the Rebbe's malchus as the Melech HaMashiach. Mm-hmm. And of course, we all signed, and we were looking for ways what we didn't know what the Rebbe meant with that sicha. I remember when I heard about the sicha, it was a surprise sicha, and my brother Sholem was now a Shliach in China, called me. You heard the sicha? I said, what happened? He said, go listen to the sicha. So I ran to call Chaim Baruch in, and
you didn't have a.
I had a hookup, but Chaim Baruch didn't have the chance at the time yet to call everyone because it was a surprise sicha.
Okay.
So anyway, either I was in a meeting, I was in Shlichus already. So I listened to the sicha. I heard the sicha. I was the all night with my friends on the phone, waiting till morning in New York, which for me is 6 a.m, by you it's 10 o'clock, to see if the Rebbe came down to daven, because it was such a shock, that sicha.
Was it you thought that the Rebbe, that's it, it's over?
I didn't know what to think. Because
that what you thought? You thought that
I was afraid that the Rebbe is like making here major changes. Because I'll tell you why.
Like the Samach Tzaddik did.
I'll tell you why. Because 5 years before, when I was a bochur, Tovshim Mem Zayin, there was a very similar sicha to that sicha. Purim Mem Zayin was basically similar to that sicha. The Rebbe said that now is the time that he's going to give over from the mission to bring Mashiach, from the leader, from the Rebbe to Hakoel, to the generation. The generation do it. And then nobody understood what it meant, because it was a very long sicha of an hour and a half, and many biurim in that sicha about different signs in the world and everything. 2 weeks later,
is that the same farbrengen that spoke the atom bomb?
What?
Did I spoke about the atom bomb? The same
farbrengen? In Purim. Purim.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks later, the Rebbe started speaking in such a sharp way. Why nobody understood. And nobody did anything. Nobody reacted to what he said, Purim Zayin. And the Rebbe spoke in Yivakel Kunim Mem Zayin very similar to the sicha of Chav Ches Nissan and Aleph. But there was ACS about himself. Why should he come downstairs and farbrengen with the olam? He could lock himself up in his room, and he could do better things, learn for himself, daven for himself. Anyway, it doesn't affect anyone with his thing. There's no results. So when I heard the sicha, I said, oh my gosh, who knows what's going to happen here? And it's interesting. So I thought the Rebbe's not going to come down. When I heard the Rebbe's coming down, I went to sleep. And it's funny, I just saw a zettel from the Rebbe that the Rebbe writes to someone. I just saw it a few weeks ago. It came out a zettel, and someone wrote to the Rebbe that people are very confused and are very scared and are very this. And the Rebbe says, either it's something that Rabbi Goner spoke to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, I came down the next day to daven. I continued everything. So the interesting was because I was literally afraid that the Rebbe would not come down, and the Rebbe said the words, I came down the next morning to daven.
What happened to the duch? You wrote it. You signed this letter about the Rebbe.
So I wrote to the Rebbe Chakat Mushlet and Melech HaMashiach because I felt to myself if I signed it already. So when I'm writing to the Rebbe any letter, I have to write with that nusach.
Yeah.
And when I came to New York, I didn't expect to get an answer. So I came to New York, and Motzei Shabbos, I went into Label Goner to arrange that we should go by dollars, not with the regular line. We should go the whole family together because I have a balabos with his wife. So Rabbi Yosef was sitting in the office. So Label tells me, I need to tell you something. Come out with me. Mm-hmm. He didn't want Rabbi Ech to hear that. So he comes out with me to another room, and he says, listen, when the Rebbe saw your zettel, he turned it over, and he wrote down, and Moshiach will come, let him know. I wrote to the Rebbe Chakat Moshe, the Melech HaMashiach.
The Rebbe said, you deal like the
when the Mashiach will come, you deal like you let him know. So I was in total shock. And I said to Label, me? I'm not even involved. What happened? Maybe when I was a bochur, I know I could tell you stories from today to tomorrow about what happened when I was a bochur. But now, I'm not even involved. So
you said when you're bochur, maybe you did things you shouldn't have or whatever. But now you're just following the.
I'm like, so Label said, don't worry. Every one of the people involved got this answer this week.
But 1 second, but there were people that wrote like that the Rebbe didn't write anything about it.
No, he said that week. So anyway, so later on, so when I was afraid the next morning to go for Dallas. I didn't know what's going to happen with Dallas. After such a tzedel, I was like, oh my God. And the Poel Mamish, the Rebbe was mekarabas in such an amazing way. So that's that story.
What were the Bachrim saying in Mem Zayin when the Rebbe said those sharp verter about why do I come down? What were the Bachrim saying then?
Oh, actually, there was a very strong reaction to this. Very, very strong reaction. When the Rebbe left the shul, we made an announcement, a few Bachrim, and we spoke about it very strongly, that the old Elam was still sitting at the top.
You made an announcement with the Bachrim, with what?
Like the Bachrim, like that we are so disappointed, and we have to do a novad to make what the Rebbe wants, and nobody is doing what the Rebbe wants. Like we were like, and the next morning we made a novad with Moshe Slonim, just came down from Israel, made a novad to do Yemei Mashiach.
That's the Vada Mimush?
No, that's different.
That's a different Vad. What's this Vad?
Mimush was before that. That's a Vad special for Mashiach in Yanim, to bring Mashiach. The Rebbe spoke at the Nafton bring Mashiach, that we have to do things to bring Mashiach. So anyway, so we went all over all the Bochum went all over the Shchune, and we raised money. At that time, we raised $10,000. It was a lot of money.
A lot of money.
And Tavshim Zayin for Bochum, young Bochum, and of course we wrote a letter to the Rebbe, and Moshe Slonim signed the letter that we're going to make a novad to the Mashiach. And anyway, someone in Tzach didn't like it. That it's already a second vad we are making. That's one thing. The Mimush.
What's the story of the Mimush Vad? What's that?
We'll come to in a second. Yeah. So they were very upset, and they wrote to the Rebbe, of course, and it came out a very sharp zettel from the Rebbe, very sharp, against that. The Rebbe said, if you want to do things, there are existing organizations, just join the existing organization and help them. but there is no need to do. And the Rebbe wrote a line, a very interesting line. And every time when the Rebbe comes out with gvuras, in the gvuras there is the chesed and the gilui. In that old zettel, very sharp zettel, very very sharp zettel. That some parts Moshe didn't even want to show it to me. That's how sharp it was. So one line was there, an interesting line. The Rebbe writes in Tovshim Mem Zayin in 1987. This is like 37 years from the Nissan. The Rebbe writes, "Me'asogas gvul leitibon Chabad." So what I took from that line was that the Rebbe is building Chabad in Tovshim Mem Zayin. The Rebbe is just starting to build Chabad in Tovshim Mem Zayin.
Leitibon, it's in the future.
The Rebbe said, "Me'asogas gvul leitibon Chabad." You guys want to build Chabad. So the Rebbe says, from making a sagas bull, from taking away someone else's thing, later bon Chabad. You want to do it the right way. But I took from it is the Rebbe in Tovshim Mem Zayin, he's building Chabad, just like the Rebbe said to Prime Minister Netanyahu when he came to the Rebbe in Tovshin Mem Ches, in the Rebbe's house. When he came to the Rebbe said to him, he said to the Rebbe, "Thank you for all the years that you helped me."
Yeah.
The Rebbe said to him, "I'm just now in the beginning." He thinks the Rebbe said, "I'm just in the beginning of my project." And he says to the Rebbe, "I'm also in the beginning of my mission." And he said, I'm in the beginning of mission, I'm called a person in the beginning of his mission. And the Rebbe kept saying, "I'm just beginning now."
Right.
So Tovshim Mem Ches, Tovshim Mem Zayin, the Rebbe is just building Chabad. This I'm saying it's related to what's, where we are now
Today.
Gimmel Tammuz.
So you're saying this is the plan the whole time.
That was the Rebbe's plan. It's to him, Tovshim Mem Zayin, he's starting. And the truth is, anybody who had a Sichos to be by the Rebbe, I had a Sichos to be with the Rebbe like almost 10 years. From when I was a 17-year-old bochur till I went to Shlichus. I was 26. I was like 10 years by the Rebbe, the farbrengens. The Rebbe, every Shabbat the farbrengen, would come down with such a fire and would speak about Afot Samayones, Afot Sayadus, with such a fire as if it's the first time he said it. Ever. I mean, a person who was not involved in a fotze, like a person from Crown Heights who just came from his job and came to the farbrengen, probably his kishes would turn because the Rebbe is speaking like it's the first time he's going to conquer the world. Mm-hmm. So the Rebbe, it wasn't like, oh, we worked already for 35 years, now we could enjoy a little bit.
1 second. But I don't know. I have a question on this. If that's the Rebbe's cook and Tovshim Mem Zayin, Tibon Chabad, now it's Esh happening, right? The Rebbe said to Netanyahu. How does that fit with the whole Tnua that, I mean, the way most people, I mean, I was alive, but I was not with all my faculties, but we heard from andere, my own family and many others. What do you mean? Nalef, the Beis, whatever. It was the end. It was the height. That's the Rebbe said Mashiach's coming. There's no plan for 30 years. You're saying it now.
How does
this fit?
I'll tell you. It's true to a certain degree, but it's not true. Meaning, for example, when I passed the Rebbe by Dallas, and the Rebbe told me,
yeah,
he didn't tell me close the Chabad house because Mashiach is coming in a second, and you're left to sell the Chabad house.
He gave you a mission for a long.
He gave me a mission. So what does that mean? And not only to me. Like for example, when Mordechai ben David came by to the Rebbe by Dallas, and he gave the Rebbe after the famous sicha from Nissan, and he gave the Rebbe an idea. What was the idea? The Rebbe should go to the Kaisel and daven with all the Chassidim for Mashiach. And the Rebbe reacted very strongly to him. The Rebbe said, "I said that now I'm asking you for ideas. Don't give me ideas. You should find ideas what to do." And he got scared, and he said, "No, I didn't mean it." And the Rebbe said,
I met him once, by the way, and I spoke to him about this, but whatever.
Yeah.
Keep it off record,
So the Rebbe said, "I don't mind people giving me ideas, but," the Rebbe said, "mi nutztos am mishtamet sein von epeston." People are using all those ideas to go to the Kaisel, or the way Shmueli wanted to make a fast, and they have 10 Yidden who will sit in 717, will fast all day. Mishtamet sich from epeston. What do you mean epeston? Ton, to do is the Rebbe's work. That will bring Mashiach, and only that. There's no other gimmicks. But the old sicha from Ches Nissan and the old sicha from Purim Mem Zayin what the meaning of the sicha is, really. It means the Rebbe like saying, 35 years I'm begging you to participate in my work of Shlichus, and to understand that each person must take upon himself the responsibility, the achrayas, to turn the world upside down and bring Mashiach. And that's the only way. There's no shortcuts. And the Rebbe said in Tovshin Yud Aleph that he wants to have shluchim everywhere in the world. When the Rebbe started the farbrengen of Afot Sayal, Afot Samayones in Bosedigani, this is after the door. There is no shortcuts here.
One
That
second,
must be done.
but one second, but the Rebbe did say Asius in
So,
Nun Aleph.
right.
The Shinod, the scholars from Mashiach, the Hechstet
Right.
Zeit. The Rebbe said
No,
things they
that
didn't say
mean-
before. Was that
100%. What it means is, just like, the famous line that goes around that Avon Paris said, that he said that he was zeicher to see Moshiach, but he was not zeicher to see the Beis Hamikdash. What does that mean? When the Rebbe started the Deir Shvi, that was the Rebbe once said, Tov Shinun, the Rebbe said about that Easter Yip Tzechon Yemei Moshiach. That means the Rebbe started to Shmuel Levit, for example, by Yechidus and Tov Chavov, the Rebbe said to him that Agam as the Teuren from Mashiach was geöffnet the Tov Tezayin. The Rebbe said, no, it's like that. Agam of Tongim of Faratza Tov Yitches in Tashchai, but the Teuren from Mashiach is then open for Tov Tezayin. The gates of Mashiach are open for Tov Tezayin, and if all the 200 in Gelai Simon farbrengen will go every Shabbos, Chazach Mashiach would come already. What does that mean? That means like this, that there is it's a eis rotzen. There is the potential of Mashiach coming every day from the Rebbe started his Messias, and every year became more and more. And not only that, the process, the talich, the process of Bias Mashiach has begun. And the Rebbe spoke in Tov Shinun about the connect the dots. You remember that ad in the New York Times, connecting the dots, to the simonim. What does that mean?
It was a Mashiach,
right?
In like a tracing
with connecting the dots. All the Meridi Kenyonim that see the fall of the Shir Metzger, Shir Metzger behind that. So
what's it called, the Chai Foundation.
Chai Foundation, right? And Rabbi Gutnick sponsored that. Yeah. So this whole idea meant that Mashiach is already, we already see the peulas of Mashiach in the world. The world is changing. So not when we say Mashiach is coming, it's not something that happens overnight. It's a process that's happening. Of course, there will be the Be'emes of Mashiach, that will be the Gilul Lakus and Vel. But this generation, and especially from when the Rebbe started in such a strong way to speak about it, and meant that the simonim of Mashiach, the world is starting to change towards Mashiach. Like we see the last 30 years, things that we never saw before. In any level, if it's about Afot Samayon, it's about Afot Sayadus, there are things today that happen in our days that didn't happen before, could not have happened before.
The Rebbe spoke also about worldly things, right? The fall of communism, right. But is the world still progressing positively that way, or
absolutely? You could see, for example, let's talk about the Inyan von Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah.
Okay. When the Rebbe said 50 years ago, I was a child. Tov Shel Lamed Ches was when Sadat came to Israel, from the president of Egypt came to Israel the first time. I was a kid in the yeshiva in Lud, in Shir Aleph. I was 13 years old. You have to understand that from the airport in Lud until Yerushalayim, the Jewish people were standing in line to welcome him. There was a line of human from Lud to Yerushalayim. And our yeshiva came also out.
The yeshiva came?
Yeah.
They didn't know that the Rebbe doesn't like this?
Everyone knew.
The yeshiva came?
Yeah, everyone. We stood right outside the yeshiva. We didn't have to go anywhere. We were on the main road. It
was like a human chain.
It was such an excitement. As if Chaz v'Sholom Mashiach is coming. Mm-hmm. Why? Pieces came to the world. Menachem Begin, I remember as a kid, Menachem Begin was in the Kaira, in the synagogue, and he was singing on the radio, V'veinu Shalom Aleichem. Everyone, and you were embarrassed to say that the Rebbe is against the peace. You were embarrassed to say that. Because what do you mean? Mubarak wants to make peace with us. Why not? What's wrong? How could you speak against that? And now fast forward 50 years, October 7th. Now the whole world admits, where do you think the weapon came in?
From Egypt.
Where? From Egypt. Not only that, the son of the president of Egypt, Assisi's son, he is the one who made a certain tax, certain amount of money on every shipment that came in the tunnels to Gaza. So, Ki'ilu, the people who made peace with us, are the people who bought all the weapons for us to kill us. Until today, they are considered now. There are many people who say that they are planning a war against Israel now, because they broke every rule of the peace process. And it's all over the newspapers. But it took 50 years, what the Rebbe saw 50 years ago. It took 50 years for the whole world to admit it. Today, from the Torah Carta to Shemer HaTzoyer, from Reform to the most Orthodox, everyone admits that the Rebbe's truth is the only truth. So this is a process of Gilui Mashiach, to see the truth of Torah, that when people can see.
So you're saying that in Tavshin and Aleph, the Rebbe said the Hechzatzayit, and everyone's feeling that Mashiach is coming today. Mashiach should have come today, because that's what the Rebbe says, that every day that Mashiach doesn't come, there's no beer. At the same time, the Rebbe had a plan for the next 30 years.
I would call it like a back plan. That the Rebbe had two plans. And what do I base it on? There's a famous letter from the Rebbe in Tovshin Yud Beis. In 1952, the Rebbe writes a letter to Israel, Tagudos Chabad. Everyone understands what Israel was in Tovshin Yud Beis. A little country just started off. And the Rebbe is writing Tagudos Chabad. The Rebbe said, I have a plan. I have a plan to conquer Israel. To conquer Israel with Yiddishkeit, with Chassidus.
That's the Lashon?
That's the Lashon. However, I need to know if Anash and Israel are willing to join me or not. And the Rebbe says, if they're willing to join me, I could do my plan. If not, that means we are not zeicha yet, and we'll have to wait for later. And then the Rebbe writes, I want to have an answer from every one of Anash to write in a closed envelope, in a closed letter, that nobody else should see it. And they shouldn't come complaining like the way they did before, the Rebbe meant the Hiskashrus, when they said there was a peer pressure. So when the Rebbe demanded from somebody, why didn't you do what not geisen? So he said, oh, I'm not a real chassid. I signed. It was peer pressure.
From others.
Everyone is signing. Should he say not signed? Is good. So the Rebbe said, this time I want a personal letter from each person. Are you willing to participate in my work or not? And whoever is not going to answer, the Rebbe says, I will count him as he doesn't want to. So you can't say I'm not answering. Either you answer, say, if it's a yes, it's a no. If you don't answer, it's a no. And Lepoel Mamish, we could only imagine, when I was a bochur, when the Shlichus Kodesh came to Israel. So the biggest accomplishment was
the Shlichus Kodesh and
all the Shluchim from the Rabbi Galitsky, Rabbi Hecht, and their groups. They came to Israel. Everyone talked about. There's a famous letter from the Rebbe. The Rebbe said them the first priority is to be Rabbanim. If there can be Rabbanim, there should be other. And Rabbi Zusha Vilimovsky was involved with the chief rabbi, Rabbi Goren, to get them a Rav here, a Rav there. You have to understand that Tovshin Yud Beis, if the Anash would do what the Rebbe wants, we could have made Rabbanim all over Israel. Nobody wanted to be a Rav anywhere. Who wanted to be a Rav? You could have a Anash in every city in Israel, Rabbanim. You didn't have to beg in the mems from chief rabbi to give you a position of a Rav. Could have conquered Israel. Could have a Shliach in every city in Israel, every yeshuv.
He's saying Tavshin Yud Aleph, Basi Lagani, the Rebbe says we're ready to bring Mashiach now.
Right.
And
the Rebbe had
still waiting. The Rebbe's still waiting for us.
It's like the letter, the letter that came out. The letter that came out from the Rebbe writes. I don't want to say the name. Doesn't matter the name. The Rebbe writes to a Shliach in California, in Tavshin Yud Aleph. And the Rebbe writes a whole letter to him and to Rabbi Shmuel David Reichik, 2 letters that came out. So one letter, the Rebbe writes to him. The Rebbe said, I heard a person came from California saying that you and your wife are complaining. There's no Jews. First, there's no Jews in California. In Los Angeles, there's no Jews. There's no Jews. There's no money. There's nothing to do. You can't do anything. And the only thing that you could do is you have a plan to buy a synagogue for $40,000. You have to understand, Lubavitch, when the Friedrich Rebbe passed away in Tavshin Yud, So there was a Gvir in Chicago who gave the $10,000 of the mortgage of 770. Here,
Robinson.
Robinson. Here, the little Shliach wants the Rebbe should give him $40,000 to buy a shul in Los Angeles. So 770 doesn't have money for $10,000 for 770. After 10 years of 770, should buy him a shul. And so the Rebbe gives them a whole letter. The Rebbe gives them ideas. This letter, if we shluchim, they were hiding this letter because it's personal.
Right.
But if we shluchim would see this letter 30 years ago, the Rebbe gives ideas. The Rebbe said to him, you are in Los Angeles. It's now summer. Make a day camp. The Balabatim will love to give you the keys. They have nothing to do with them after the summer. Make a day camp. You could make money from it. You could become a leader. Then the Rebbe says to him, there's a university. Go and offer yourself to be a lecturer on Chassidism. You speak English well. Speak about Chassidism. Then the Rebbe said, there are modern Orthodox rabbis who don't know about Chassidus. They would love to hear lectures. Then the Rebbe says, make services for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Announce, take a hotel room. Announce that you'll do Rosh Hashanah service with speeches in English. And you'll sell seats, you'll make money. The Rebbe gives them ideas how to. And the end, the Rebbe says, but if you are not going to be happy to be in Shlichus, there's no point in you being, suffer and bicker about it. Just come home. So either you are taking it and you are happy with that. If you're complaining, we don't need it. The point that Shliach came back, and it took another 20 years to the Rebbe said Rebbe Konin. 27 years, 26 years.
So the Rebbe has a plan, and the Rebbe's pasha the Rebbe wants buy-in from the Chassidim.
Exactly.
So, I was discussing on a different conversation we had over here. I think that's what the Rebbe was saying, Chavches Nissan. I'm serious about this. This is literal. So do it.
The Rebbe means business. And therefore, all the famous sicha that the Rebbe said about the fourth level of Shlichus, where the Shliach is a responsible person on his own, and he makes decisions on his own, it meant that you take it. I remember a sicha the Rebbe said, and the Rebbe smiled. The Rebbe said that the Rebbe started a project. The Rebbe said he doesn't want people to start writing him letters what to do. And the Rebbe said that he's like Yemei Bereishis. The Yemei Bereishis said, I'm willing to go on Mesiras Nefesh, but Sa'uni v'Teluni Amayma. Even to jump into the water, he didn't want to. He wanted them; they should pick him up and they should throw him into the water. The Rebbe says, a guy comes and says, "I'm ready to go on Mesiras Nefesh, but the Rebbe should do everything for me. The Rebbe should pick me up. The Rebbe should tell me to do right or to the left." The Rebbe says, "You take responsibility, you figure it out yourself, and be happy with your work."
At a certain point, in the first few years, the Rebbe told people to go on Shlichus. After a certain point, the Rebbe Bechlal never told anyone to go. You had to ask.
Right. And the Rebbe said clearly in Tafshin Chof, the Rebbe said that he is not going to say anymore who to go, and people will have to ask themselves, and they should want to go, because the Rebbe wanted that people should feel partners in that they feel the Sichos to go, not that the Rebbe tells them to go, and not that he goes only because he's going to get a compliment from the Rebbe. The Rebbe wanted that people should buy into the idea what Shlichus is, what is the Rebbe's work in the world. That goes all the way back to the famous Chavches Sivan farbrengen, Tavshim Memtes, when the Rebbe finally accepted.
Chavches Sivan.
The Rebbe accepted Chavches Sivan.
When the Rebbe accepted it as a date,
as an official, because the Rebbe, the first 3 years,
no one knew that the Rebbe and the Rebbe came to America in Chavches Sivan.
Nobody knew about it till Tafshin Memdalet, when the first Sichos Kodesh from the Frierdiker Rebbe came out. And all of a sudden, we saw there is a letter from the Rebbe, from the Frierdiker Rebbe, telling one of the lawyers who helped bring the Rebbe to America that today, Chavches Sivan, the Rebbe came to America. Then my son-in-law came, and then my daughter came to America. And nobody knew about this Yom Tov. Nobody made a big deal. Even on Yom the Rebbe was hiding it. The Rebbe write Sivan Tavshin Aleph, didn't say a date, Sivan Tavshin Aleph. And nobody ever thought to make a big deal, even though the Rebbe never made an official farbrengen on Tes Oder, but every time when it was Shabbos around Tes Oder, or Shabbos, he spoke about it every time. But he never made a special date. Whatever the reason is, we don't know yet. But the Rebbe didn't make a special
The Rebbe never made a date of Tes Oder.
Right, it wasn't like an official farbrengen
date. We just published now a sefer that it's on the way now from China. A sefer of all the Yemei Bereishis. It goes through all of the dates, the history, what happened by the Rebbe on the date, and also there's like Niskanim v'nasim, what the Rebbe said about the date. So taka tes other, there's, how do you know what a date is? How do we know? When we're compiling it? Whatever the Rebbe spoke about. So tes other, the Rebbe spoke about it, so we know it's a date.
Right, of
Yud
course.
Gimel Iyar, the Rebbe's brother, we know it's a date because the Rebbe spoke about it. V'chulu v'chulu. So
Right.
Chav Chesivin also.
Right.
Yeah.
So Chav Chesivin, the Rebbe didn't speak about it in the early years. And then, so in Tovshin Memdalet came out Hiskashrus Kodesh, and there was a young man from Israel, his name was Rabbi Solomon, and he went around 770 showing everyone the Hiskashrus Kodesh and saying why we don't make a big deal about it. But we still didn't do anything about it. Then the next year, Tovshin Memhei, Bashgoche Potis, and if you think about it, it was like Chav Chesivin was like 2 days before the famous Yechidus Pitagur of Rosh Chodesh Tammuz of the seforim.
About the seforim, yeah.
Yeah, but this was 2 days before. We didn't even know about the meeting then.
You had no idea that the whole seforim thing was happening then.
We knew we knew on Rosh Chodesh Tammuz that there was a meeting with the Agudas Chabad. Nobody is allowed to know what it's about, but the Rebbe will speak about it in Beis Tammuz. That's all we know.
Everyone knew that, okay.
That came out somehow because, when 7 people go into the Rebbe's room in Tovshim Memhei for a meeting, that didn't happen in many, many years. And Agudas Chabad never was an active organization in that way.
Having meetings with the Rebbe, yeah.
Yeah, so it was it had to make waves. So it became known, but nobody knew what it is. But 2 days before, with the bochur in 770, was my first year as a bochur in 770, we decided, myself, Zalman Liberov, and a few of the bochur in the Shavstein, we decided together that we are going to make a farbrengen. And when the Rebbe came in to my room, we decided we are going to sing a song. And those days, the Rebbe used to come in upstairs.
Upstairs
and there was no singing, nothing. It was still the way
even when Zalman Jaffe was there was no singing, or only when he was there.
Zalman Jaffe, even in the middle of the week, he wouldn't sing. Only if there was a Yemei Bereishis or something. Shabbos downstairs. If there was a Yemei Bereishis, yeah, but
so singing is for downstairs. Upstairs is
yeah, it was like the Rebbe comes in, comes out. There was a very we'll later describe the mincha upstairs was very mincha Ma'ariv upstairs, very, very special. The Rebbe was sitting on that table. It's very unique. It's very special. But anyway, so we decided what nigun to we sing. Which nigun should we sing for Chassidim? We decided we'll sing the same nigun of Rosh Chodesh Kislev, because Rosh Chodesh Kislev was a nigun that the Rebbe became healthy. So this is the Rebbe was redeemed from the Holocaust. It was saved from the Holocaust.
It's like a Yom HaTzolah.
Yemei Bereishis. That's what I thought about it. Anyway, the Rebbe comes in, we started singing, and it's seconds. The Rebbe comes out of his room and he gives Doka to the keys. It's seconds. The Rebbe heard the singing. He came in, he made with his hand. The Rebbe could have ignored us right away. It's like the Rebbe is
out of the ordinary.
Yeah, it's out of the middle, out of nowhere. And the Rebbe made with the hand very strongly. And that was enough for us. And that night was a farbrengen. You know how big the farbrengen was? Cheder Sheni, in his upstairs in Zal. That's how big the farbrengen was. And we farbrenged all night. And the next day by Mincha we sang, and the Rebbe again made with the hand. And that was the beginning. And then Tovshim and Vov.
The bochur? There was
the bochur, just the bochur.
Yeah.
And then Tovshim and Vov, this is the first year we decided to make a really big deal. We got together. We are going to make a big farbrengen, a real big, a huge event, just like Rosh Chodesh Kislev. And it happened to be, but Gocher Podis, that was Shabbos, Chav Chesed was Shabbos. And it was also a Yovel. It was 45 years from when the Rebbetzin came to America, from Tovshin Aleph to Tovshin Vov. And mamish Friday afternoon, I decided to make a tshuva. And what was the tshuva? It was just a few letters from the Frierdiker Rebbe about the Chav Chesed, and also the sicha. The Rebbe spoke to Tess Oda the year before, a sicha about the Frierdiker Rebbe coming to America, but he connected it to the new Afotzos Hayadus that started in America, not just about the saving him, about this. So I took that sicha, put it in, and the Akdosha was a very special Akdosha for the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin for coming to America, Yevel Shanim. And we gave it into the Rebbe. I ran upstairs to Shigalov. He had a print shop there from Vad and Chassidim, and he immediately agreed. And we worked together. We put those days you had to put the letters. It was not a computer. Everything was, and we put together the Akdosha, and we printed. I gave it to the Maskiros. I gave it to the Rebbe's room, and I put it on the tables. So the whole Shabbos was already, beginning of a. And then, but if I'm bringing, so we gave in a bottle of mashke to label, and we told label the Meir Alik will come up for us because the bochur we're not going to go to the Rebbe for this. So we asked Meir Alik, so he said, no, he couldn't make up his mind. Then Shabbos by day, he started to get cold feet. He's not sure, maybe the Rebbe will not be happy with that, he's not sure. Anyway, the first sicha, the Rebbe started a whole sicha about, because it was Shabbos Gimmel Tammuz, so always the Rebbe spoke of Shabbos Tammuz, about the Fidik Rebbe, about going out of jail, Shabbos Gimmel Tammuz, Beis Tammuz. But here the Rebbe took a U-turn, Beis Tammuz. Because of Beis Tammuz, the Fidik Rebbe came out of Russia. And because he came out of Russia, he came to America. And then he started a whole sicha about the coming to America. It was very clear that was about this. So Meir Alik turned around to us. He said, I'm going to go up. No worries. And then when he went up, the famous story that he went up and he gave the battle, and the Rebbe said to him to announce it. So he had to announce what it is. So he said that we invite all the Anash and Mimim to come to farbrengen in honor of the Rebbe's coming to America. So the Rebbe raised his hand and with a smile and he said, Ishu Beisai. So he thought the Rebbe meant that he should invite men and women to come to farbrengen. So he said again, Allah invited. So the Rebbe was very laughing, and finally Yale told him that I meant. So he stood up again, and he said that Allah invited the Rebbe and the Rebbe's and Ishu Beisai came to America. It was a big. So we right away saw there's a huge kirov, and then the Rebbe gave an answer every year. But the Rebbe, to speak officially about that, he didn't speak about it. Tov Tes, it was again Shabbos, Chav Chassidim, and then the Rebbe spoke about it. And the Rebbe started the farbrengen with that. And the Rebbe said that since it's already 3 years, and it was already many have done this, celebrated this day of Chav Chassidim, and we saw good titzos. And the Rebbe said it'll be a hemshech, a big hemshech from those titzos. So therefore, the Rebbe said, "Tzimash gochapotis be sought that it was accepted and it was done and it was good titzos." So the Rebbe is going to speak about it. The Rebbe started all farbrengen on this. And one of the nekudas the Rebbe spoke about Chav Chassidim is the nekud that we spoke about just now, about this whole idea of what the Rebbe wanted from Chassidim, what the Rebbe meant in the Sichos Kodesh, what the Rebbe meant in the Old Shvi. The Rebbe spoke about what is Chav Chassidim, Koyach of Sivan. The word Chav Ches is Koyach. What is the Koyach? What is the strength of Sivan? What is Sivan? Sivan is Kabbalah Satera. The Eibishter gives the Torah to Eden. And what is Tammuz? Tammuz is the Avedas Hatachton. When the Eden start to work with the Torah. So Chav Ches Sivan is the day that ends of the Koyach that Sivan gives you to start your work. So Sivan is Milamayla Lamata. The Eibishter gave you the Torah. And Tammuz, you start to working. Milamata Lamayla. You start to do something with the Torah. And the Rebbe said, but the Rebbe, everything is so mashgoch is the Chav Tes Sivan is the day when the Shluchim, the Meraglim, were sent to check out Israel. So the Rebbe started a whole sicha about the Meraglim, because this was Shabbos Parsha Shlach. The Rebbe said the sicha, the famous question, Shlach lechol ledaitcha. Rashi says Shlach lechol ledaitcha. If you want, send the Meraglim. If you don't want, send. So the Rebbe asked the question. Moshe Rabbeinu was used to, the Eibishter says, everything was commanded. The Eibishter said, if you want, send. If you don't want, doesn't. They go, oh my God. Moshe Rabbeinu should have said, something is not right here. And v'horaye, things didn't go right. So why did he do it? And then the Rebbe said, why Yeshua sent the Meraglim again? If Moshe failed, what is he doing it again? And the Rebbe gave the answer, which is a very, very powerful answer, but they're all kind of the Shvi. The Rebbe said that Moshe Rabbeinu was very, very happy when the Eibishter told him Shlach lechol ledaitcha, because it was a new Aveda. Till now it was Tzavet b'nei Yisrael, Daber b'nei Yisrael, commandment. The first time the Eibishter says, I want you to choose it. And the Rebbe said, the famous, in the Pirkei Avos we say, that there is a Seir Etzeincha Kirtzeinoi and Batel Etzeincha Pnei Etzeinoi. So the Rebbe said there is two Avedas. There is Batel Etzeincha, commandment, you have to follow, listen what we tell you. And the Rebbe said, the very dear Aveda is Aseir Etzeincha Kirtzeincha. That you choose it.
In Chav Ches Nissan, the sicha, the Rebbe said a similar thing, that we should want mashiach and ask for mashiach ad masay, not because I said mipnei atzivui.
Right.
So it's a
The same
So,
nekuda.
so you're saying basically that Chavches Nissan, Rebbe said things that he already said, Kama Pa'amim. The Rebbe just chose to say it clear. V'meila, it was shocking.
No, there was a line that the Rebbe never said. That
Ich geb,
line
ich
that
geb,
I know, the line that I did everything I can.
und es given Lehev Lirik.
Yeah, that
Als was ich hab getan, bis
yeah,
ist der Lehev Lirik.
that line he never said, and that I completed my work. Ich habe getan alles was ich kann. Like I'm done. That everything, my mission is complete, and now I need you. It's what's left is you have to jump in. What you didn't do for 40 years, you have to do now. Because you, Chelek, what you have to do, I can't do for you. You have to do it.
So you're saying in the sicha lane is already the Indian of Gimmel Tammuz is already there in that sicha?
I mean, to a certain degree, of course. I mean,
You didn't think that then.
No, nobody thought about it. Of course not. To us, it was 100% sure, 100% sure that Gimmel Tammuz will never happen. 100%. Never. But because and the taka didn't happen because whatever, as the Rebbe explains in the famous Sichos about Hiskashrus and Tavshin Yud, that the famous story the Rebbe brings from the Emek HaMelech from Hebron, the famous story the Rebbe brings in Tavshin Yud about Avraham Avinu that when all the Yidden in Hebron went to Yerushalayim for Yom Kippur, and only a few Yidden were left, and they didn't attend to the minyan. Avraham Avinu came, and then he disappeared. And then eventually he came by on his dream to the Rov in town, and he said, I was Avraham Avinu, I just couldn't handle to see the pain that you have no minion, so I came. And the Rebbe asked the question, how could you be mitzvah for Avinu Tam minion? It's very nice, Avraham Avinu came, but it's not in the Shomei Guf. There is a lacha. Like the way the Rebbe Tavshin Yud, the Rebbe was doing a sefer on Pesach Tavshin Yud. And people asked the Rebbe did the sefer before these talks. He did do a sefer.
Yeah.
And people asked him, so you say the Rebbe is here, and there is a place for the Friedrich Rebbe, and there is a kaira and everything. So the Rebbe said, when it comes to halacha, yeah, so it's like there is.
That's what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe said,
I don't know the Loshe Dov. The Rebbe said, when it comes to halacha, so we have to do it. So the question is, the Rebbe said, how could you mitzvah for Avraham Avinu Tam minyan? And the same thing the Rebbe asked about Rabbi Yosef, that he used to come every Friday night to make kiddush to his family.
Yeah.
How could you might say it's all good and nice, but it's not in the Shomei Guf? How could you? So the Rebbe answered that question that when it comes to the Nisim, they came to the world only for their generation, only for their people. They didn't come for their mission. Their Shlichus is not for themselves, and therefore when they have an istalkos, Mala Alam. They continue their mission. There is a separate reason why they needed to, why their guf and gashmi needed to. They get another. The Rebbe said Yuchvat Chavov. They get another levush. So, but they are still continuing. So when they come in a guf, they are part of the minions. They are considered as if it's a ilmazal gashmi.
You knew this Gimmel Tammuz Tafshin and Dalet?
What do you mean if I know this?
What are you telling me now? I'm saying that this is, you knew this right away, or you had
Gimmel Tammuz, we were broken to pieces. We were in total shock. And when I was in Alaska and I heard of Gimmel Tammuz, I took my whole family. We were supposed to have a day camp. That next Monday, we were supposed to have a day camp. It was our first day camp from our preschool. We left a note on the door that we left to New York. Sorry. And we took the whole family, went to the airport, Motzei Shabbos. We bought tickets on the spot, and we went the whole family to New York. And we did not know if we will ever come back. We went to New York. We were in total shock, total broken. We couldn't think. The whole flight to New York, I didn't eat anything. I didn't daven. I didn't do anything. I was in total shock. And every airport, we stopped in 2 airports. Every airport, all the screens, all the television screens, CNN were all about the Rebbe, non-stop. There was no WhatsApp in those days, no cell phones. All the screens were about the Rebbe. And I couldn't believe that the sun is shining and that people are eating in the plane. I just couldn't believe that the world is still going on. To us, the world stopped. And I came to New York. They told me, don't go to 770. The Levi is already going to the oil. I went from the airport in a taxi. The entire highway from Kennedy to the oil was blocked. You couldn't move. We were standing like an hour and a half, couldn't move anywhere. It was packed with cars from all Lubavitchers and Jews and from Jews. And finally we made it. We couldn't go with the cars. They wouldn't let any car in. The whole exit to the oil. We had to stop by the main road. We had to walk all the way. And I had a suitcase with me. There were two modern Orthodox bochur who came to the funeral, and they come over to me. They said to me, "I'll schlep the suitcase for you," because they saw I was like schlepping. I had two children. My wife was. We were like ois mention. We didn't sleep the whole night because we were up already from the night before. We didn't know we heard the shmuos already. The rumors were coming, and we were just walking all the way up. I came there. Everything was locked up. You couldn't even go in. We were standing outside, and we were standing there. And I must tell you, there was a very when I came finally to the oil, when I was standing there, I remember Ershi Spalter standing next to me. We were all with the Sertukas, we all made Kriya, and somehow there was like a little bit of a feeling of the Rebbe's presence that gave us the koyach to hold on. I don't know what it is. And I mean, later it says in Chassidus that the moment when there's talkos, there is the Kol HaMoler She'omar Kol Mechayob, and Take, the Rebbe's name was all over the world at that day. All over the news, we spoke about the Rebbe's work and about the Rebbe and about the Shluchim. And then I came in. There was a line to go in. Everyone passed by the oil, and then there are two options. You could have one option to go behind the oil and sit there, or go outside. So I went behind the oil, and I sat there, and then I stayed there for 7 days. I stayed on. There was no house. There was no tent. There was nothing. We were standing there under the trees.
There was other Bachim, and there's other people there also.
Yeah, there was a bunch of bochim and people, and in the night there was the whole night people came. First, I was sitting somewhere next to the oil, but then I was already 3 a.m. and people came, modern Orthodox people and 5 people, and it didn't look good. So I moved backwards. Nobody should see us. The people don't understand what are you laying here. Anyway, so we were going back. We went back, and we were staying there. And I remember the next morning after the stalkers, someone came with a copy of the Rebbe's letter from Tafshin Yud, that it's only an Nisoyin, and that's only Nisoyin, and the Rebbe is really with us, and not to be nispol. And I remember this gave us a lot of chizuk. And
You guys were talking to each other?
The next day we started talking to each other, yeah. And we were sitting there like groups, and we were there the whole week, sitting there. And so we didn't know what, but as we sat there next to the oil, we got the strength back. And Shabbos, I went back to New York, to Crown Heights, and there was a farbrengen of all the shluchim on Shabbos, and the elder.
Some people stayed by the oil for Shabbos.
So yeah, some people stayed by Shabbos. I was supposed to stay by the Shabbos there, but there was pressure on me that I should go back after 7 days being there. And so I went back, and I was there, and the elder shluchim were talking, and I remember my shver saying, he said it's yadua by Chassidim that the elder Chassidim had a hard time after his talkas to move on to the next Rebbe. So he said, we, the elder shluchim, we went to Merkez to sit shiva. The bochim, the young Yigalite, were staying at the oil. So we made a mistake. We have to go to the oil. And that's when he understood. He switched. That it took him a week to understand that he has to go to the oil. That's the place to go. That's where the Rebbe is. And then we went back, and we had a big event for a tribute for the Rebbe and so on, and that gave us the koyches continue. But this was, we were sure that will never happen. You have to understand, anybody who saw the Rebbe, anybody who had the Sichos to see the Rebbe, and I saw the Rebbe the first time when I was 11 years old. Anybody who saw the Rebbe, you saw a presence that you knew that this is not human. You knew that what you're seeing is non-human. And everybody, like when I was a little kid and I came the first time to the Rebbe, and my father used to go every year to the Rebbe, and we had the Rebbe's pictures and everything. But when I saw the Rebbe the first time, was Vov Tisha Tov Shalom and Vov, the first time I saw the Rebbe, it's like I was in shock.
How old are you?
I was 11 years old, but
11.
I wasn't probably a typical 11, but I was 11 years old. And I mean, and I come from from Eretz Yisrael, from Bnei Brak, from Ha'ir, Mlei Chacham v'Seforim. When I saw the Rebbe, I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. And the whole month of Tishrei, the Rebbe, like the expression "Lishta'ov beguf the market." The Rebbe, like a vacuum. I was hypnotized to the Rebbe, glued to the Rebbe. You have no idea. I mean, I couldn't, and I was standing right behind the Rebbe. My father had a place in the first line behind the Rebbe.
Your father came every year.
In the early years he started Chavches, then he started Lamed. He didn't come in the beginning every year, but then later.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Hold your thought. I'm very curious. Your father wasn't born Lubavitcher Chassid, right?
Right.
He became a Skadiv, but he seemed to have this like Hiskashrus, but he never even grew up with it. He came from Russia. Because Chassid.
Well, in two words to say, my father became a chassid at a very young age, at 13 years old, and the reason why he became a chassid, because when he ran away from the Holocaust with his family, the only place they were able to run away to be safe from the Nazis was to Tashkent and Samarkand. And in those cities, in those cities, in Uzbekistan, in those cities, the only organized Yiddishkeit underground was Chabad. So any frum Jew, like my grandfather was a frum Jew. He wasn't a Lubavitcher Chassid, but he was a very dedicated frum Jew. Like he was a Chassidish, like a general Chassidish. He was a sheikhet in his town.
My question is not how he became Lubavitch. Lubavitch has more. There's many stories like that. There's more like that than whatever. That's not my point. That's my question. My question is this like deep Kabbalah sale. This is Hiskashrus.
Because he was a Mesiras Nefesh, my father. So when he was in jail, he was from the very few people who did not eat treif and he did not work on Shabbos. Most people couldn't stand the pressure. And my father was a Mesiras Nefesh. So when he went to the Rebbe the first time, Tov Shechafches for Tishrei, that Tishrei, the Rebbe said that all the Russian Jews should stand around him. So my father, you could see the famous picture of Rabbi Leib Lalevsky bringing a balabos to the Rebbe. This picture,
it's
it's like a New York Times picture. There are 3 pictures there. And each one of those pictures is like a painting. Mm-hmm. It's such an unusual picture. And you see my father is standing between Ben Shem and Mendel Futterfass. And he's standing literally one foot away from the Rebbe, like literally one person away from the Rebbe. And you could see how he's watching the Rebbe, like he became glued to the Rebbe. So you could see that he's a Mesiras Nefesh, and the first time he saw the Rebbe, he became a Mekusher like fire. But he was a chassid of the Rebbe also in Russia without seeing the Rebbe, just by learning from Chassidim, who were Chassidim of the Rebbe. He had Rabbi Paltaver was his mashpia, and other people, right all the way there in Tashkent, in Nissan, of all those Chassidim. He was a kid who grew up on there. He was, when the Rebbe is saying the sichas that the Filik Rebbe's Talmidim at Peres. My father is one of those Peres, because he was not a Lubavitcher. In Tov Shin, the Filik Rebbe was already in America. And he grew up raised by Chassidim with the Filik Rebbe, Chassidim the Rebbe Rashab. And it was a Baal Mesiras Nefesh, the Tachlis. I always say about him that he is a Yid, that the Yechida was Begila by him. So because when you go through 8 years in jail, and you go through my father went through, you're a Yechida Yid. So Elamaza didn't speak to him at all. It didn't
Okay.
mean anything to him. So he wasn't expelled from anything anymore.
Okay,
So
so
when
let's
he
go
saw
back.
the Rebbe, he saw the truth.
So let's go back to Tav Shalom Advav.
Yeah, literally, I was literally taken by the Rebbe's presence. Like I became a Chassid. The Rebbe made me a Chassid that second when I saw him the first time. I remember we came to New York, was 4th Tishrei, and I was lucky that my uncle Itche Chazan was a bochur in 770, the Shliach in Rome, Italy.
In
The
Rome.
Nebuch now lost his son, and he started he created the whole empire of Shlichus in Rome, and he had made a kiruv from the Rebbe. So anyway, when I came to New York, I was an 11-year-old kid, and he was my uncle, bochur in 770, and he came to the airport to pick us up. And he brought us to 770. And the first memory for 770 was all the bochum standing outside. It's green, the grass, beautiful grass outside. And I asked, where's the Rebbe? I said, the Rebbe went home. I was so disappointed. The Rebbe went home after Mincha. The Rebbe used to go home after Mincha for a lunch with the Rebbetzin. And they said, don't worry, the Rebbe is coming back.
The Rebbe went twice, by lunch and by supper?
No, the Rebbe used to go only by lunch. And then at night, he used to go very late at night, like,
So
10
the Rebbe
o'clock
didn't
at
go
night.
home. The Rebbe didn't go home like supper.
No, not such a thing. Only the
Lunch.
Rebbe used to come home. So in the summer, the Rebbe used to go home at 12 o'clock at night. In the winter, the Rebbe used to go home after Ma'ariv, about like 10 o'clock or something like that. But the Rebbe used to go in middle of the day in the summer for lunch after Mincha. A little bit after Mincha sometimes, 5 o'clock, depends on the times. But the Rebbe used to go once a day, will go back home and come back to 770. So that Rav Tisha, they went home after Mincha, and we came, and the Rebbe came back like an hour later. And at those days, the Rebbe used to come from 7 to 770. If it was middle of the Seder, nobody was outside. And even not the middle of the Seder, when the Rebbe used to come in and come out, nobody was allowed to be in the old Eastern Parkway. So people used to hide by the chotzer, behind the trees, but nobody was allowed to be like in front of the Rebbe. So the Rebbe came, the Rebbe's car came, we were standing inside 770, the door was open, and Binyamin came with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe came out. I went up the steps. It was only me and my father. There was nobody there. And as the Rebbe came in, the Rebbe took out money from his pocket. The Rebbe, the Rebbe stood so strong, before the heart attack. The Rebbe looked like mamish, like a king. The way he walked, it was unbelievable. And he the Rebbe had strong movements. He took out, he moved the sirtuk. He took out money from his pocket and he gave it to me in my hand. And I felt the Rebbe's finger, gave it to me strong. And he waited for me to give it to tzedakah, and then he said a dank, thank you. And every day the Rebbe would give me tzedakah and say to me, thank you.
The Rebbe would say to you, thank you?
Yeah, every day. As if the Rebbe would say thank you to every kid that he told them to give money to tzedakah, because
that was a Seder then?
That was a Seder. The Rebbe Kilo thanked you for doing for him the Shlichus of the mitzvah to give tzedakah. So he would say
by dollars you see the kids telling the Rebbe a dank.
No. This was before. I mean, when I was a bochur already, you're right. When I was a bochur, when I came to 770, the Rebbe gave tzedakah to everyone. The Rebbe never said anything. But when I was a kid, the Rebbe said a dank every time he gave us tzedakah. And that Tishrei, I became the Brems. And of course, the highlight was the Yechidus, of course. The Yechidus was the highlight, because typically the Yechidus, most times when a father came with a son, they will first speak to the parent and then speak to the children. That was the typical, but there were exceptions, several exceptions. And I was one of the exceptions. When we went into the Yechidus, so first we were in the beginning of the Yechidus, because the Yechidus to be starting from 8 p.m. and go all the way till 5 in the morning. The Rebbe would have Yechidus
when you hear that the Rebbe would have Yechidus till 5 a.m., I think it was usually like Tishrei time when there's so many people, right? I think that was typical,
even every Yechidus, whenever there was Yechidus, it was
till
all
5
night.
a.m.? Yeah, okay.
4 a.m., 5 a.m., because we talk about in the Lameds already, there was so many people want to go in Yechidus. So no matter when it was packed. No matter when it was. Maybe in the youth, there was short Yechidus night, but in the Lameds, there was not such a thing. And that Tishrei, when I was there with the Rebbe, there was night after night after night, all week the Rebbe night Yechidus. From a whole week.
You had to stay, if you wanted Yechidus, you had to stay until your appointment.
Right. we stayed to Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, but not because of that. My Yechidus was Chafei Tishrei. My father made the ticket longer. So the Yechidus was, of course, the highlights. But the entire Tishrei, I mean, I could sit here all night to describe that Tishrei.
What happened by Yechidus?
When I went to Yechidus, so we went in. So first we went in the beginning, because I was a little child, so they gave me the Yechidus to be in the beginning. When we're standing in our line, and all of a sudden Rabbi Gona came up to say that a person who was supposed to be in Yechidus, and not Lubavitcher, didn't make it yet. And if it's okay with us to go in early. So my father said, sure. My father was jumping always. So some people are not ready yet. I didn't say, because Yechidus day, you would go to the mikveh, you would fast all day. Even as a child, I fasted and I put new clothes and everything. Yechidus was like you prepared like the way a chosen prepares to his chuppah day. That's how we prepared for Yechidus. All day fasting and saying Tillim and davening and going to the mikveh again before the Yechidus by night. The mikveh is to be open. Everyone should be able to go to Yechidus, the mikveh before Yechidus. And I could tell you, when we went in, I was so afraid. There was such a pachad. The Rebbe's demeanor, the Rebbe's face, the Rebbe's eyes was such matil ema. There was such a pachad. I was just shaking the Yechidus. Till the Rebbe didn't start talking to me and I calmed down. I was like, and also
Bechlal, that was Bechlal, when you looked at the Rebbe, that was like a feeling.
Always.
Pachad.
Whenever the Rebbe was in public, if it's farbrengen or it was tefillas, when they used to say the Rebbe gate, there was an announcement, the Rebbe gate, there was a pachad in the whole room. There was
could you describe this a little bit?
But the Rebbe's presence, it was like I said, it's not, when you saw the Rebbe, you didn't see a physical person. There was like a shine, like a light that came with him, like a awe that came with him, like a real pachad. It was a real feeling of lakus that wasn't stam. It was like, therefore, no picture and no video could do justice to it, because that's a real thing. When you saw the real thing, it's like standing by Bahar Sinai here in Aseret Dibras. It's the real thing. It's not a video. There are some good videos that really give over a little bit of that shine, but the real thing, it's beyond words.
But it's a pachad of like pachad means like afraid.
Pachad means physical afraid and spiritual afraid, all and all done together.
So it's not like a yira that's explained like that's like a covered. It's like a different feeling.
It's not just yiras a covered. It's more than that. It's pashat yira. It's a real yira. It was a real pachad.
That's why bochur, at least maybe it changed later, but bochur was hiding.
Of course, because when the Rebbe looked on you felt.
Why did later some bochur start sticking their face in front of the Rebbe?
Because people wanted to see the Rebbe, and there was no Yechidus anymore, and people want to have that closeness to the Rebbe, the feeling of closeness. So when you stood close, you felt the Rebbe is looking at you, so you felt that you know what I mean. So everyone in Lubavitch and everyone in the Jewish world wanted to have a piece of the Rebbe. The entire competition was, give me a moment of the Rebbe. Give me a kiro from the Rebbe. Give me a non-kite to the Rebbe. That was the whole competition in Lubavitch. People went to Shlichus to the end of the world just to get that one moment from the Rebbe. Because that one moment the Rebbe is Yekorom Mipninim. There's nothing in the world like that. There's nothing than that moment with the Rebbe. There's nothing like that. So people would do a whole life just to get one smile from the Rebbe. Because that one smile is more than anything. There's nothing in the universe that could compare to that. There's nothing. No gold and no silver and nothing. So when we went into Yechidus, so I was very afraid. And as we walk in, the Rebbe buzzed. The Rebbe had a buzzer on his table. We hear the buzz, and Label run in, and the Rebbe shows Label the list, and the Rebbe says why there's a change in the list. And Label explained that they can make it, and he left. And then we gave the zettlach. My father gave the zettel, then I gave the zettel. Then the Rebbe started like a sicha to me. The Rebbe says, Konst du sagen, na dvar aloche, wat das gelernt heint, oder Nächten, oder Enechten, oder Farderuf, can you say advar halacha that you learned today or yesterday or the day before or before that? And I closed my eyes. I was so scared because the bochur prepared me. Because my uncle Iche, because he was a bochur, he brought me into among the bochur. So I became within 2 days. I became like a ben bais among the bochur. So I felt at home in 770, and the bochur kept telling me the Rebbe is going to test you. And then there was one question the Rebbe used to always ask all the children about how many tzitzis there are, and they told me what to answer. It's a lamed beis keneged leiv. They prepared me the question, but they told me the Rebbe is going to test you. You better prepare. And I was so scared. You can't imagine. I was scared from the Yechidus, and I was scared that I was going to test me. And after all, I was just 11 years old. Anyway, I went in, and so the Rebbe said that I closed my eyes, and I just thought what I'm going to say to the Rebbe. And just came to my mind a Mishnah in Maseches Makas. At the time in my cheder, we learned two Gemaras, one Legirsa, one Leyuna. So Makas, we learned
You were in a Lubavitch cheder? No.
A Lubavitch cheder. We had a very small Lubavitch cheder. We learned two Gemaras. So I said to the Rebbe, Mishnah in Makas was about Eilu Laking, about if someone kills somebody, what is his Anash? And if he kills b'shegeg, goes to Golos. If he kills b'mezid, that's misa, whatever. Let's put the Mishnah we learned. And the Rebbe started to ask questions. And one of the questions I remember, the Rebbe said, "Wie wird sein der din in New York? How would be the do in New York if someone will kill somebody? What was it?" So that's the Rebbe. There is no bezin, so there is no Golos, and there is no Anish. There's no Ir Miklat. And then the Rebbe asked me one other question. I didn't understand what the Rebbe was asking. And the Rebbe repeated it again. I didn't understand. And the Rebbe moved on. And then the Rebbe said to me, the first thing the Rebbe said, "Was is dein Namen?" Even though it said in the zettel. I think the Rebbe saw I was so nervous. So I said, Yosef Yitzchak. Then the Rebbe said, "Wie viel is dein Yemei Bereishis?" And I didn't understand what the Rebbe asked, because wie viel dein Yemei Bereishis, what does that mean?
Like how old you are?
Yeah, but I didn't understand that. So my father explained. So I said, I'm 11. Then the Rebbe said, "When is the Yemei Bereishis?" So I said to the Rebbe, "Ches Tishrei." This was 3 weeks after. So the Rebbe said, "Hast du gegeben tzedakah dem Tag?" And you gave tzedakah? And I didn't remember. So I was silent. In a second passed, the Rebbe says, "Doch gewen Shabbos." So you couldn't give tzedakah, even if you wanted it. And I was like, oh my God, thank God I didn't say anything. So the Rebbe said, "Doch gewen Shabbos. Hast du gegeben tzedakah far dem, Erev Shabbos?" I didn't remember. So my father said to the Rebbe, "Et doch gewen do." My father meant to say that I used to get from the Rebbe's tzedakah every day. So probably I got that day also. So the Rebbe laughed. He didn't smile. He laughed and he said, "Nor in Eretz Yisrael darf man geben tzedakah, in Chutz darf man nicht geben tzedakah." Only in Israel have to give tzedakah, in Chutz you don't have to give tzedakah.
The Rebbe laughed b'koil.
B'koil, like he was like laughing, And then the Rebbe said, the Rebbe moved on. And then the Rebbe asked the question, "How many tzitzis you have?" And I said, "Let me basically get live." The Rebbe saw that I had a ready answer. And but for some reason, the Rebbe asked every child that question. And then
I heard that the Friedrich Rebbe, I think it was I don't know if this might be wrong, but I think Zev Katz, the Friedrich Rebbe gave him the sitzes to kiss.
The Friedrich Rebbe tzitzis, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's connected.
It could be connected. There is also something in that famous chizoyin where the Rebbe Rashav spoke about the tzitzis. There is something about tzitzis.
Which chizoyin?
The chizoyin when the Friedrich Rebbe told the Rebbe that he had a chizoyin label. Yeah, so there is a line. There is a line there about the tzitzis. Whatever. It's interesting. There is something about tzitzis.
Mm-hmm.
The tzitzis helps you, protects you from all kinds of all kinds of CNS and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so there is something about the tzitzis. Anyway, so then the Rebbe said, Rebbe told me, the Rebbe said to me, the Rebbe gave me $1, one to give here. No, the Rebbe asked me another question. The Rebbe said to me, "Do you say Tilim? Do you say Tilim?" That's it. Zogst to Tilim? So I was the head of the Chevas Tilim in our Shabbos in our shul. Because my father was running it, but I was running it under my father. So to me, it was like a question. The Rebbe was asking me if I say Tilim. So I said, sure. So the Rebbe said, Jeden Tag, like means the Shir Tilim every day. It's a whole different story. I would say Tilim like Shabbos. In the Shabbos Tilim, I would say Tilim, in the Sibbe Shabbos. But the Rebbe said, Dokas Tilim Jeden Tag. So I already said sure, so I didn't know what to say. So the Rebbe said, they are fine.
So you started.
Yeah, of course. So I said, they are fine. So then the Rebbe gave me $1 to give him dough and $1 to give me Atzisol. And then the Rebbe gave a long brocha, gave me Chaydel Choil, and the rest I didn't remember. It was a long brocha. The questions I remember, but the rest of the brocha. And then the Rebbe started speaking to my father for a very long time. We were a long time inside. There was one question that the one thing my Rebbe said to my father didn't understand. I explained to my father what the Rebbe said. It was like I had a relative who didn't have parnasa. My father asked a bochur for him. So the Rebbe said, schreibt mir as Melachtem Lecha Shamayim. He writes to me that Melach Shamayim means he was a teacher. And my father didn't understand. The Rebbe said again and again. So I said to my father, the Rebbe said that he was a teacher. So like a few little things there.
The Rebbe looked at you when you said...
Yeah, and when the Rebbe finished talking to me, I was trying to look the Rebbe's room. I was a kid. There was a curiosity. And as soon as I tried to move my eyes, the Rebbe had his eyes on me, and he locked me up. And I didn't remember nothing from the Rebbe's room, only the Rebbe's eyes, nothing. Barely maybe the table, that's it. When I came in after Gimmel Tammuz, I didn't recognize the room. I never remember the whole room. I only saw the Rebbe's
I heard this
eyes.
from Kama V'Kama. That's the same thing, that they came in after Gimmel Tammuz the first time they saw the room.
I was there for a very long time. I couldn't even move my eyes.
I heard this even from somebody, but he was involved medically after Chavzayin Adar, and he told me the same thing, that today he sees things in the Rebbe's room that he didn't notice, and he spent hours there.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a. I mean, even a simple thing like 770, when the Rebbe was in 770, or now when the Rebbe is not there. And I never understood what is it until I saw the Rebbe Tzanchana's Yaman. I remember 770 when the Rebbe was there. It looked huge.
Mm-hmm.
I come in after Gimmel Tammuz. It looks so small. And I couldn't understand what is this. And the Rebbe Tzanchana writes in her Yaman that when the Rebbe comes into her apartment, the 10 minutes the Rebbe is in the apartment looks so big. Because the Rebbe's presence, it was like a air, a gilui air. The Rebbe used to come in, and everything looked like wow. Everything the Rebbe touched was wow. Everything, I'll never forget when the Rebbe sent the keys to Yankel Hecht. That moment, that's in Chassidus, the Rebbe sent the keys. The whole 770 was like glued to that second to the Rebbe. Because the Rebbe did something which he never did. None of us ever saw it. And the way he did it, what we saw from the Rebbe's face coming that second, was like, anybody who was there was like glue. Like you saw something unusual. I still remember the Rebbe's face and how the Rebbe does like this. And he sends it to him. And I still remember the Rebbe's hand and the Rebbe's face and the Rebbe's lips when he did it. It was like, because it's a gilui lekuz. It's not stam. So when you see that, you're like, you stand like in shock. And when the Rebbe smiled, the entire, like for example, when the Rebbe used to say a story by farbrengen,
yeah,
the whole 770 would drop silent. How do we know that the Rebbe is saying a story? Usually before a story, the Rebbe starts smiling. There's a little smile on his face. The Rebbe stopped his sicha.
it's something you see about the Rebbe a lot, that the Rebbe laughs at the thing or smiles before he says it. Yeah.
Right. And there was all of a sudden in the second the Eilam, because the Rebbe mostly didn't tell stories. So when the Rebbe told the story, the Eilam was like, even people who didn't listen to a word of the sicha because they didn't understand, they were too tired, they didn't have a brain for this. But a story from the Rebbe, they were like, and it was dropped like, even though the Rebbe spoke, it was quiet. But there was a whole different quiet when
Yeah.
the Rebbe started telling the story.
Back to the Pachad, whatever. In the early years, you listen to farbrengens. The Rebbe said something that there's a certain that whatever that was that there's a Sichos. You hear people laughing, like reacting to what the Rebbe is saying. In the later years, you barely hear it, and if you hear it, you hear people saying shh.
But still, when
The
when there
mood the
was
mood
something
changed.
right, but when there was something really really unique, even in our years. I mean, not as much as earlier, but still, the Elam was like there was all of a sudden there was a chatter in the Elam, like everyone was like
Yeah.
talking to each other, like people would talk about what happened now. Like it took a moment till everything quiet down because it was like wow, especially between the sichas. Not in middle of a sicha, it would be totally silent, but in between the sichas, if there was something like that, the Rebbe would say something loud. I mean, I remember, for example, when Rabbi Glasman's father came to 770. And he decided, close to the end of the nigun, he decided to sing a new nigun, his nigun. And the Elam didn't know his nigun. And the Elam was like trying to, and the Rebbe said, help the
Help him
Maruis.
out.
And then the Rebbe looked down and it said, Chassidus Shock, because he realized that nobody is singing, he quiet down. There was Chassidus Shock. So those moments when this happened in the middle of the sichas, between the sichas, people would chat with each
Yeah.
other. Like,
You
but
can hear it on the recording. The Rebbe says they start singing. I think he was singing Mi'ami Admura, like,
right,
but maybe he didn't sing it with the right tune or something. So then the
right.
Elam started singing it. The Rebbe says, "Nit mit Eiernigen." That's like nit mit Eiernigen,
After Maruis,
Zeinigen. That's like half my race. Nit mit Eiernigen, Zeinigen.
also Yemei, after
Yeah,
Maruis,
yeah.
but anyway, so going back to this to the Yichidus, so this was the highlight. But the entire Tishrei, the Rebbe was mekarav me in such an amazing way. Like for example, I was a little kid, but for some reason there was only you have to understand there were only 6, 7 kids from Israel that Tishrei Lamedvov. 7 kids and the American kids, the Karnaitzers, didn't come middle of the week to 770. They had Cheder. So we were sitting in 770 all day long. We had nothing else to do.
You didn't go to Cheder.
No, of course not. I came to the Rebbe. So I was sitting in 770. So I saw the Rebbe coming and going nonstop all the time. I remember, I'll give you a little things that, Marshall, one day I was standing in Chalamoid, I was standing in the Zal upstairs. And my uncle, with the bochur, was not, Chalamoid is not, it does not Sdorim Chalamoid. So they were sitting and chatting on the Rebbe's table, the table where the Rebbe used to sit, the bochur used to sit there.
In the Zal, yeah.
Is upstairs. So they were chatting, and I was standing by the edge of the table near the door, and I'm just listening to their jokes and whatever. And all of a sudden, I feel somebody's looking at me. So I turn around, I see the Rebbe is giving tzedakah, and he's like looking in to see what the bochur was doing. So I said to everyone, "The Rebbe is here," and everyone jumped up, and the Rebbe heard me say, "The Rebbe is here." The Rebbe moved out like as fast as he can. Like he disappeared. You know what I mean? So it's like such moments when you have with the Rebbe. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like you become like within days you.
So when you went back to Eretz Yisrael, you're the only one that experienced the Rebbe amongst your friends.
Amongst my friend, yeah. Actually, in my city, my hometown in Bnei Brak, there was never a child who traveled to the Rebbe before me. I was the first child my
Your
age.
father didn't bring you. So you're not the oldest.
The first, I'm not the oldest, but before me, he never brought children to the Rebbe. I was the first child he brought to the Rebbe. And the people in my shul, the elderly people, couldn't even understand that. First, it was very expensive in those days, and they couldn't figure out where my father gets the money to take, not only to travel himself, but to take even a child. But then they would tell me when I came back, the older people told me, what did you understand there? What did you hear there? Like, they couldn't understand. Why did your father took you? You're a little kid to the Rebbe. Chassidus to go to the Rebbe. What a little kid going to the Rebbe. And I remember how my friends, I had only a very small group, my friend Moti Laufer, the one who wrote Yemei Melech, and my friend is Orlando from the Shliach in Toronto. I would like give over to them, and we would even imitate how it looks. The Rebbe, we would make a table with a stand there with a beamer. We imitated because they never saw. There was not even videos of the Rebbe at the time. Tishrei Lamed Vav, the first video that Friedin took from the Rebbe, and he came to Israel after that and started to show the videos. There's no movies from the Rebbe. So we never saw, we only saw pictures, that's all. We never saw. So I explained, Moshe, I would tell him what Simchas Torah meant, Hakafes. I was sitting under the Rebbe's table when the Rebbe came to stand his Hakafah, and how the Rebbe took the children so seriously. You see how the Rebbe made the children Chassidim, that when the Rebbe would hold the Sefer Torah, they would make with the head to all the pyramids of the bochur and the Anash, all the bleachers, and with the same starkheit. It's not like to the children he just smiled. With the same starkheit, the way the Rebbe's face looked by the Rebbe's Hakafah, with the same atzmus, with the same giluyim, with the same spirituality that he did to the elder, he did to the kids, with the same starkheit. And I still remember till today, that Hakafah is more than all the Hakafahs I saw after, because here I was standing right next to the Rebbe, because I was a child, I was under the table, and it made such a big difference if you stood really close. Mm-hmm. When you stood really close to the Rebbe.
But you didn't go back to the Rebbe for years afterwards, right?
Right, until I was a bochur, and when I came to stay for good, because I was not one of those bochim who knew how to raise money and knew how to make jobs, and I was a battler, so I didn't know how to do those things. So I went when I was.
Your father brought other kids.
Other kids. And when I was 16 and a half, that's when I went to New York.
But that itself was unusual, to go 16 to learn in New York, no?
Well, yes. Well, my older brother, my brother Naftali did it, and my brother Yisrolik did it, so I followed their footsteps.
At 16?
And, yeah.
This came from your father? Your father wanted
probably my father encouraged that, and we all wanted it, and it was our dream. My uncle Itche Chazan, my father went to Moshe Yoslavsky, who had a gmach, and he told Moshe Yoslavsky that he's going to be the guarantor, that he will give back the money, and my father sent them to the Rebbe in Tafshin Chavches and Chavtes.
Or your father raised the Shechazan?
He didn't raise him, but he was the Lubavitcher uncle in the family. So
he was the influence.
He was the influence, and he sent them to New York. And then when we came, the Rebbe, my father was a big believer in going to the Rebbe and being there, staying there.
So you went to Torah?
I went to Torah. I was in Shir Gimmel Torah, and I remember the first summer.
What? You 16?
I was 16 and a half. I was 16 and a half, almost 17.
So you were Mesifta?
I was in Zal. I was in Zal learning with my chair was Avram Galitsky. And
I understand. So She'alef, whatever.
I was younger than I was Shir Gimmel. I was younger than the other kids. Yeah.
You jumped 3 years
because I came from Lud. So in Lud I already finished the Shivik Tana. So I was already a year in Kfar Chabad. I was already almost 17. So I was already a year in Kfar Chabad. So So Lepoel, I was 1 year in yeshiva, and then I went to Shlichus. From Shir Gimmel, I went to Shlichus to Seattle. Tovshim Gimmel Memdal, I went to Shlichus. Did 2 years.
And then when you came back, Memhei, you already bochur 70.
Yeah. I was 20. I was already beginning 20, 1920. Yeah.
And Memhei, everything shifted because the seforim. Then I'm saying that.
Well. Yeah, but before the seforim, there was a good portion of Tovshim Memhei, which was an amazing year, and Tovshim Memhei was still the farbrengens and the Rebbe's demeanor and the whole Holech and Semti was still like in the Mems and the Lamets, and it changed with the court case.
What do you mean?
Many things have changed later. It was still like. There was a sense of peace and joy, that we saw from the Rebbe. And the old 770 was a different 770. Like the seforim took Lubavitch with a storm, and it changed Lubavitch forever. The story of the seforim, the Didan Notzach, and it did change Lubavitch, because the old Didan Notzach was about the future. We didn't understand it then. We didn't understand why the Rebbe is investing so much in it, why the Rebbe is taking it so hard so much, why it's so much worth it to uproot the entire Lubavitch for the seforim. like what's happening today. Years later, when we listen to the sichas and we see what the reaction at that time, we just felt that there is a fight, there is a kitrug against the Rebbe, there is a opposition to the Rebbe, which is klippe, opposition kedusha, and we have to fight it and we have to win it, and we won. But we didn't understand the real application, what really it meant. But like I said before, that the Rebbe, like when he gets to Eretz Yisrael, that the Rebbe was 50 years ahead of everyone. Even with the seforim, the Rebbe was way ahead every one of us. We didn't understand what's behind it. It's like you see now how the Rebbe's moves, every move the Rebbe, like I said the story about this Jew in Alaska, that the Rebbe sees 50 years ahead what's going to be with him and what's going to play out. We little people don't see it. So when the Rebbe says Mashiach is coming today, and the Rebbe means that now he's planting the seeds for the coming Mashiach, and it's going to come. This is the process to bring
So,
Mashiach.
so you're saying in Memhe, so before Memhe, you're saying the kitrug, like the cheshach, brought out like a yisrin ha'er, not just for then, but for
Right.
he,
In other words, the kitrug happened because of the preparation for the future. That itself
it needed the Eibush to the given the Sibbis. It needed to happen.
needed to happen, because it doesn't make any sense why it happened then. It doesn't make. I mean, from a logical point of view, the nephew should have come and demand the books in the youths
Tafshin Yud.
when he had the balabatim on his side, the balabatim from the yeshiva, when he had.
It came out of left field.
It's kind of, what, 25 years later you come asking for it. What happened? But the Eibishter was Mesava Vasibas. It needed to happen. There is a famous mimer from the Rebbe from Boston Ikani Tovshin Memalev, where the Rebbe speaks about the famous moshel that a king that he when he's mebazbez the eitzres, that all the treasures that his parents and his grandparents had, and he doesn't show it to them. But when there is a war, he's mebazbez, and then the Rebbe says, and if that's not enough, what else is the king willing to do? That he's willing to give mashli chayiv meneged, is willing to give his life away. The Rebbe says that the king is willing to give his chayim agluim. Why? Because what is the real chayim of the king? What is the real life of the king? What is the real rotzen of the king? Is shema l'retzene, that his will, his mission should be fulfilled. So the king is willing to go to war in order to win the war, even if he gives away his chayim agluim, in order that should be his chayim amitim, his real rotzen should be in his chayim. So when you listen to that maimer, Basadigani Tavshim Aleph, you mamish hear from the Rebbe what's going to be in Gimmel Tammuz. The Rebbe says clearly that the king is willing to go all the way and give away his chayim agluim in order that his will should be in his chayim. And you could see the poel. The Rebbe was begging people to go on Shlichus, was saying sichas after sichas after sichas. And when really was the Pritzas Derech, when was really the real story of Shlichus began? That's what I said before about the Rebbe said b'chavches Sivan, that when the Rebbe says chavches Sivan to Memtes, that what is the ultimate aveda, yishlach lechol edaitcho b'koyach atzmai, when you do it because you want to do it. And the Rebbe said then chavches Sivan that Moshe Rabbeinu said that it's such a tayre zach that people should have the ability to choose, that even if you make a mistake, it's worth it. Even if the Meraglim will mess up, it's still worth it. Because the Maile from Mekoyach Atzmai, nobody could do it for you. Only if you could do it. So the Rebbe said that the ultimate Deira Shvi is Bekoyach Atzmai. That we, Milmata Lamailo, that we choose to do it. So the Rebbe gave us a new Chavchesim Memtez. The Rebbe is like starting a new Aveda. And what is the new Aveda? And the Rebbe says in the farbrengen, that when it started, when is the true Bekoyach Atzmai started? Only when Pnei Moshe were not there. Only by Yeshua.
So I'm going to say that because I'm thinking to the way you're describing what it means to be in the Deher, we always write in the Rebbe's presence. It's like a language you always use, in the Rebbe's presence. And for me, I mean, I wish, I mean, I saw the Rebbe and the Iyas Tzaddik Peil Shleishakach La'ad, etc. But I wish that I can have efes ketzeyu shemitz of that feeling. And I obviously, like the Fidik Rebbe writes that, and I've heard in Asher Shliach Kachekom, heard from D. If you have to listen to those that talk about it, then you can have some type of feeling, and I've experienced that also. But you're saying something deeper, I think, that in order to bring mashiach, in order to memal the Shlichus of the Rebbe and Der Ashvi, it's not going to be in such a matzav now, like you're saying over.
I mean, the famous line the Rebbe says, the Rebbe said, "Tapchem asher martu lavazi heimi reshua." That this is the nekudev as tapchem asher martu lavazi, that everyone thought after Gimmel Tammuz, it's over. Well, what's going to be? And it's a true opposite. The Dafke. I still remember the interview that Chaim Potak had on CNN in Tafshin Gimel.
Right in the Dalit, right? It was right before Gimmel Tammuz.
And the interviewer was also a Jew. I forgot his name. A famous
Ted Koppel.
Ted Koppel, that's right.
No, it was Nightline. Ted Koppel. Yeah,
Nightline. And Ted Koppel is asking Chaim Potak, "What's unique about the Rebbe?"
Yeah.
And Chaim Potak says, "It's impossible to explain it. You have to. You only if you saw it, you understand it." And then he said, "I'll just give you a little example. I was afraid to be alone with him in the same room because I'm afraid I'll not be any more objective."
Yeah.
He didn't want to go on Yechidus.
Yeah.
And when you see the video from Chaim Potak's farbrengen, from top of the Gimmel, you see how, when the Rebbe speaks about him, how he takes his eyes.
Yeah, the Rebbe tells me as he used his influence of writing for Kedusha,
yes.
And he had like a shtickle bardel, so he's stroking his beard,
he's
getting all nervous. Yeah.
And there is a farbrengen before that, I used field before that, when he came to the Rebbe the first time, and the Rebbe said, and he says to the Rebbe, "I learned in the yeshiva." He felt the need to tell the Rebbe, "I learned in the yeshiva." He was a Reform rabbi, but he tells the Rebbe, "I learned in the yeshiva." You could see that he was nisayrer there in such an amazing way in the Rebbe's presence that later, by the second time he came to the farbrengen, he didn't want to come over to say l'chaim. And to Yechidus, he was afraid to go because he'll lose his objectivity. He felt the Rebbe's koyach, and he tells that couple in Tavshin and Dalet, he says that if you didn't see it, I can't explain it. But I could tell you I was afraid to be with him in the same room because I will not be objective anymore. That he felt the koyach of the Rebbe, and he was a yeshiva kid. He was a
so why are you mentioning this?
That to what extent the Rebbe's koyach is, to what extent that even a Reform Jew and a writer, Reform rabbi, who wrote books and everything, when he was in the Rebbe's presence, he felt it.
So what do you say? What are you saying for after Gimmel Tammuz?
It means to say that the true koyach atzmai could not be fulfilled when Pnei Moshe were there, because it was such a koyach that affected everyone. So when you went to Shlichus, you went because the Rebbe wanted to go, not because you really understood what it is it's all about. But the Rebbe was saying that the ultimate of Der Shvi must be koyach atzmai, that we should want to do it, that we should choose that. The Rebbe wanted to see a generation of Chassidim who choose the Rebbe, who choose Shlichus, who choose the Chassidus, who choose the Likus.
And I think you see it. It's still happening now because Gimmel Tammuz happened, right? But I'm saying just right now, Rabbi Shalom Ber Lipsker passed away. Just now, saying you see people. There's like a certain. I told a few people that I was speaking to that there's a certain like changing of the guard. You ever saw the changing of the guard in the palace? I didn't see it in England. I saw it in Canada. They come in, the old group leaves, and the new group is there right away. So, us Chassidim, me and you and everyone else, it's not pshat that there's a hefsik. It's a direct hemshich. It's different people, and it's dafke the younger, right? And dafke.
No, but there is another nekuda here, that the Rebbe is here now stronger than before, even though that we don't see the Rebbe's presence.
So that's what I was going to ask you, because at the end of the day, you can say, okay, fine, it's a tifir aveda, it's deeper, it's breiter, right? The Rebbe says, but you see, but there's a Chalishus because then the whole 90%, 80% of Lubavitch was hanging on to this, and now you could go there, you could go there, you could be here, you could be inted, you cannot be inted. So it's a sach shverer. So
From one hand, it seems harder, but in truth, it's much more easier than even was before Gimmel Tammuz.
why?
That's in truth,
Why?
because we see bepoil that it's like whenever the Eibishter takes one thing away, he gives another thing. Whenever the Rebbe takes one thing away, he gives something else. Like we see it about blind people, that they have a very special chush in hearing things and smelling things. Because we don't see the Rebbe physically, the Poel Mamesh, the Rebbe's presence is much more begilui in us, in a way that if we only choose to do the right thing, you get such brochas and such push from the Rebbe that you never saw it before Gimmel Tammuz. So, for example, I always give the example about my daughter going with Shlichus to Zambia. That typical shluchim, as they come to a place, it takes them 10 years, 20 years to have a building. She came to Shlichus of Zambia, she already had a balabos waiting for her, giving her a house, and want to give her a whole campus. Those things didn't happen 50 years ago, didn't even happen 30 years ago. Such things didn't happen. The same thing happened now in Fairbanks, with the Shliach who went to Fairbanks. That a balabos bought him a building before he even set foot in Fairbanks. Those things didn't happen in our times.
And
What does that mean?
there's also another nekuda of the relationship of a Chassid Rebbe relationship, that today in a gewisse zin, if you're plugged in and if you have the Simas slave and care about it, and you're a Chassid, you probably know and understand the Rebbe more than people did that were standing by farbrengen, because the amount that you read, the amount that you watched, and the amount that saying people tell me when they read, let's say I heard from an older Shliach, probably your age, he told me, I read the hair. What I like about it is because I read things that I stood by. I was at that farbrengen, and I didn't realize that it happened. And I read it. So I'm learning what happened when I'm learning about what I saw. So
obviously, it's a very, very. There's no need to say that how broken we are that we don't have the Rebbe here with us. That's the obvious. Obviously, that we are very broken. Obviously, that we are very missing the Rebbe, very empty without the Rebbe. No question about it. There's no need to say that. But the Rebbe is being the Rebbe. At the end of the day, he makes the decisions. He is the Rebbe. He makes the decisions, what's going to be and how it's going to be. And he made that decision. So we need to accept the decision and see that if the Rebbe made a decision, it must be that that's for the good of the generation and for the good of the entire Jewish world and for the good of the future Mashiach. That's the Ratzon Hashem. That's the Rebbe's Ratzon. That's the Rebbe's Shlichus. If the Rebbe says in a Maimer that the Melech is going to be Mashteh Chayiv Beneged, the Rebbe says like maybe 7 or 8 times in the Maimer, repeats it, that he gives away the Chaim Agluim for that she's Chaim Ritzeinei. So if the Rebbe says that that's what the Melech needs to do to win the war of bring Mashiach, everyone understands that to bring Mashiach means that the entire universe will change. The entire world will change. This is not a simple thing, being Mashiach. So if we don't know anything about Mashiach, what do we know? We are simple people. Fleishike mentioned, what do we know about Mashiach? And when the Rebbe is telling us this is the day of Shvi being Mashiach, so the 3,000 years from Matan Torah, from 3,300 years, the entire Jewish world is waiting for Mashiach, and this is our generation. It's our Rebbe, and we are the people who are charged with that mission to bring Mashiach. I mean, this is like crazy stuff. This is not a simple thing. We are talking about the greatest world event ever. So obviously that things unusual are happening. So the fact that there was a Gimmel Tammuz, and the fact that the Rebbe is the Deir Shvi, and there was no, as the Rebbe said in New York Times to Israel Schenker in Tov Shelamed Beis in 1972, Shas Hashivim, he asked the Rebbe what's going to be the future. He said to the Rebbe, you, and everyone could look it up in the New York Times, it's online. He said to the Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, you and the Rebbetzin do not have children. who's going to be the eighth Rebbe. And the Rebbe gives 4 answers. The Rebbe says, first the Rebbe starts, I have plans to live many more years. Then the Rebbe says that we should leave the worries for Mashiach. And we should live for Mashiach. And then the Rebbe says, he continues and he says that why should we push him off Mashiach for tomorrow? He could come today. And then the Rebbe says there is a great deal of work to be done, more than 120 years of one person. And we are now right after the 120 years of the Rebbe. We're 123. And we see what happened in the last 30 years. You see, the Rebbe said there is a great deal of work. The Rebbe saw this whole plan. The Rebbe needed to have a Shliach in every city, in every pina sheba'olam, and it's finally being fulfilled. The Rebbe said that Chassidus is not a maflega. It's not a party.
The Rebbe said
the
first night. The Rebbe said it.
Right, it's going to be for all the Yidden. And finally, we see that Sai Peilesh Chassidim are learning Chassidus. Finally, we see that Litvishe are starting to learn Chassidus. Now we see that everybody's Frei Yidden. I mean, we had a Reform rabbi. My son-in-law, Rabbi Levi Gutterstein, tells me a few years ago he went to a funeral the Reform rabbi had here, and he led the funeral from a printout of Chabad.org. I mean, this is like we are reaching just 3 years ago. I was doing the Corona, I think, 4 years ago, on Erev Yom Kippur, the night, the day of Yom Kippur, the day before Kol Nidre, Erev Yom Kippur. There was in the Reform Temple here in Anchorage on their Facebook. There was a picture of the Rebbe with a quote from the Rebbe.
Yeah.
I mean, for the Reform Temple, a picture of the Rebbe, and the temple put it up. Yeah. I mean, this is like things that you couldn't even imagine 30 years ago. If someone would tell me 30 years ago that the Reform Temple in Anchorage would have a quote with a picture of the Rebbe on their Facebook, Erev Yom Kippur, the day when they all come to, when the biggest day in the temple, when everyone comes to Kol Nidre, they should have a quote from the Rebbe with a picture of the Rebbe, I would tell you you're crazy, you're out of your mind. It will never happen.
So what do you say? First of all, anyone that's listening to our conversation and there's a bochur, I think it's very clear, like the Rebbe says, the mitzvah hadir is to be a Shlichus. The other day is a machazayin to be part of the Rebbe's mission and go on Shlichus. What do you say to many people that were not zeicha yet to be, like we said before, shluchim rasmim, official shluchim? How are they part of the Rebbe's mission of bringing mashiach?
If you're not a shliach, like if you are balabas, you mean?
Balabas, yeah, balabas.
I mean,
I was marking that anyone that's listening to this obviously understands that the mitzvah hadir is in Shlichus, and if they're a bochur or a unmarried girl, it's time to make the achata to do it for the future.
I mean,
but if you're not,
the answer is very simple. The Rebbe created miftzoim for that. The Rebbe created tanken for that. The Rebbe created the entire by the Rebbe. There was never such a concept that if you're not a shliach, you are off. You could do whatever you want. You are out of you are not part of the mission. I mean, it's like when I grew up in Bnei Brak and as a little kid, right, in the Lametz. Every Purim, every Hanukkah, they were going, a bus from Anash, from our shul, would go travel to Machnot Tzava, to the bases of the army, of the military, to bring to read the Megillah to the soldiers, to bring Purim to read the Megillah, and Hanukkah to light candles, and every Yom Tov. I remember as a little kid, the Rosh Hashiva of Kfar Chabad, Rabbi Yankel Katz, he was not a shliach, he was a Rosh Hashiva. He lived in Bnei Brak. He would go with my father, with 2 other Anash. We would go to the biggest hospital in Israel, Tel HaShomer, which is right near Bnei Brak. We would travel there with his car. Yankel Katz was the driver, and we all slept thousands of matzahs in bags, all made in bags already, and we'd go from room to room and give out matzah to every patient. I mean, what does that mean? There is so much work to be done. A shliach could only reach to a few hundred people. That's it. How much can a shliach? The Moshe Anash live in Crown Heights. Let's take an example. There are, how many Botei Chabad we have in Manhattan? Let's say 10. let's say 10. There are 3 million Jews in Manhattan, 2 million Jews in Manhattan. Is it possible for the 10 Chabad to reach even 30% of those Jews? It's impossible. For that, we have our old Crown Heights. Every Jew in Crown Heights the Rebbe wrote, Meguyas, is mobilized to work, to the Rebbe's work. If it comes Friday, you have to go on Mitzrayim. And if you're a balabos, you don't have to go on Mitzrayim only on Friday. You go to Mitzrayim every day. You go to work, you go a half an hour earlier, or you go during lunchtime, and you go all the office around you, and you put on film with Yidden. And you become the Shliach of those Yidden in at your work everywhere. You take them to the oil, you invite them to your house for Shabbos. What did that mean? There is so much work to be done. It's the old concept. If I'm not a Shliach, I cannot do the Rebbe's work. It's crazy. You fly to Israel, you go on the plane, you put on film with Yidden. You tell Yidden to go to the oil. There is so much work to be done. When I was in Geman in Crown Heights, before I went to Shlichus, I wrote the book about the Rebbe, Yemei Bereishis.
Yeah, can you talk about that? Why did you write Yemei Bereishis?
Sure, I'm coming there. So I used to have a class of a group of Israelis who would come to my home, and we'd have a class once a week, or I'd go to their homes. And then I took them to the Rebbe to Dallas, and
You're a Kaling man?
It was right after Koilel, before I went to Shlichus. And I gave shiurim. I took them to the Rebbe. 2 of them had children because of that. Now they're big supporters of Chabad in their cities where they are. Like Beimer Tov Shinun was a parade. I took them. I passed by the Rebbe because I wanted to see the Rebbe. And even though I was not part of the groups, and I was the last group, and I asked Shomber Baumgarten, "Can I go?" He said, "Go." So I started to go with them, and Yankel Echt is asking on the microphone, "Who is this group?" And I felt bad because I didn't tell I didn't get official permission. Shomber Baumgarten let me, but I want my Eden to see the Rebbe. And we went by, and I told them all to look to the Rebbe. And you saw lately what Moshe Brodshtein said about the parade. You saw that announcement he made.
No.
Moshe Brodshtein, those are human from the Yuds. Moshe Brodshtein made an announcement that every bochur has to help with the parade, and he said, and every Anash, and he said, what is a parade? What is the purpose of the parade? That all the Jewish children in New York should have opportunity to see the Rebbe. It says, "Vero isa kayin v'nir po anega." So he said, when the Kohen sees when the tzaddik sees the Yid, the nir po anega, that he heals the wound. That's the mission of what is the parade? That a little kid who is not religious should see a Rebbe, and that will stay with him for the rest of his life.
I was walking home. I went to Shalom Zacher here in Stanford, and I was walking home with the uncle, not the uncle of the Rachanimel, the uncle of the baby, the uncle of the father. It's not maybe we live near each other, so I was walking home with him, talking about the Rebbe, Chabad. I was about like Beimer parade in the 60s. Yeah, I saw the Rebbe. Yeah. He's not the first person I met like that.
I'll tell you in a minute a story about a Yid that told me what he saw the Rebbe. I'll tell you in a minute. Go ahead.
No, I finished.
Okay, so no, because you asked me about the Yemei Bereishis, so we'll talk.
I want to know. So Yemei Bereishis, you write a book about the first year of how the Rebbe became Rebbe and the whole story, which is a meridic accomplishment. But was hat es angefallen? What Tafshin Nun Aleph, Tafshin Nun? When we were working on this,
Tafshin Nun, yeah.
Why Tafshin Nun? You decided to work on this book. Like, where does that come from?
So the real story is that when I was a little kid, I read the old Sefer HaTorah, and I was really I knew the old Sefer HaTorah, and the Sefer HaTorah starts with the Alter Rebbe, goes all the Rabbeim, and goes till the Frierdiker Rebbe, and then the Frierdiker Rebbe. What is the last chapter in Chelek Daled? The Histalkos from the Frierdiker Rebbe. And in the Histalkos, what was the chapter about the Histalkos? It's actually a letter that a bochur wrote from America to Israel. This bochur's name was Dubinsky. It's Moshe Dubinsky's son. Motel Dubinsky, he wrote the letter. So Chaner Glitzerstein took that letter, Kemoshe, and he printed it. And when I read the letter, I saw it's missing a lot of important pieces. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound that there's enough information on what really happened there.
You're saying
from reading the letter as being a writer, I felt that there's a lot of holes in that letter, meaning that you don't see the Rebbe's presence in the letter, in the funeral, in the all the Chilach in 770 there. So I knew that something is missing here. I mean, he wrote just his personal perspective, what he felt needed to write to his father. He didn't think about. Anyway, so later on, when I worked on a Sichos Kodesh, if you know that me and Gershon Eichern as bochur in Tovshim Hey, this was one of my projects in Tovshim Hey, that as a bochur in 770, that we were looking for the Rebbe Sichos, and we couldn't find in 770. You couldn't find the Rebbe Sichos. And finally, when there was in the library sitting there with Sichos, I saw there is only it was like 20 or something books of all the Sichos from the Rebbe from Tavshin Yud till
So the
Tavshin.
Hanachas were coming out, but no one bothered to compile them into proper svarim.
No. The Anochas from the Mems, they came out organized, but the Anochas from the previous years, they were missing because there was no real organization like it was in the Mems. So Bochim would write Anochas, or they didn't write Anochas. There was the Menichim, sometimes they wrote, and sometimes they were Anocha Protis. Anocha Protis means that nobody really made
You're talking like in the Chafs.
In the Chavs and in the Lamets. Until Lamed Vov, something like that, there was no real good Anochas. So a lot of the Anochas were like just Anocha Protis, so there was not published to everyone. So only 30 Bochim had it, and it was in the Rebbe's library, and that's it. So nobody, if a Bochur like me wanted to read the Rebbe Sichos, so there was only the 21, 23 volumes, and that's it. And every of the books was missing, like 10 farbrengen was missing, 20 farbrengen was missing, this year, from that year. So we wanted for ourselves to collect, we thought just for ourselves to make for a few bochum. So we bought a copy machine, and we asked Rabbi Krinsky's son, the Shliach in Levi Krinsky, asked him if his father could give us permission, New Hampshire, if his father could permission to have a room in 770. He gave us a room in 788, and we started to copy the sichas. And then we started to research, and we saw, oh my God, there is so much more. We didn't realize. Anyway, it took us a few years to do it, and we made 50 volumes out of. From the 23, we researched, we found all the farbrengens. We have 50 bochim work for us. One bochum was typing, Rabbi Vogel was working for us, bochum typing the Rebbe Sichos from tape, and then printing them, and then binding them. It's a whole story. And we had to go to Anash in Chanites. We promised Anash that we'll make a set. If they give $1,000 for us, we will give them a set. And like Moshe Rabbi Schaefer was one of the first people that I went to, and he agreed. And he gave us $1,000, and then Rabbi Zalman Goraye gave us more than $1,000 for the project, and we didn't believe. We were young kid. We had no idea how long it will take. It took us anyway. So when I did the Sichos Kodesh, when I worked on Tavshin Yud, someone told me that Rabbi Eli Gross has a Yuman. So I went to him, and that started my relationship with Eli Gross and with the Yuman of Tavshin Yud. And I took some sichas that he wrote that were not in the Sichos Kodesh, and I put them in as Anocha Protis into the Sefer. But because of that, I started to read the Yuman, and I realized there is such a rich information of what was going on in Tavshin Yud. So the idea already started from Tavshin Mei, that we have to make a book about it. But I never really took it seriously. But then finally, after my wedding, I decided I'll do this as a project, because I put some pieces of Tavshin Yud in some of my tshuras that I made for Chav Ches Sivan in the years of Memvov, Memzayin, Memches, and I also did I printed in Kfar Chabad magazine some of the beautiful stories from Tavshin Yud, translated from Eli Gross's Yuman. So I got kind of involved in that as a bochur.
So you were doing this mitam yourself, the book?
Yeah, of course.
To Kahas, what you wanted to do?
No. I started to work on the book, and then I went to Rabbi Krinsky, and I spoke to him about this. Rabbi Krinsky said, I knew it's a very sensitive issue. Rabbi Krinsky said, I can't promise anything. You made the book. If the book is ready, we'll give it to the Rebbe, and then we'll see. But he couldn't promise me. First I went to Rabbi Chassidim, to the other people in Kehos. They all sent me to Krinsky. And I went to Krinsky. Krinsky said, I can't promise. And the book is ready. If you're willing to do it. So I raised money for the book, and I
was going to say, no one paid you to do this.
No, of course not. I raised money to make the book, but I felt there is a need for it. And then you know the whole story how I took also Rabbi Lezer Z, Rabbi Lezer Kokowski to the Shliach in New Jersey to help me. He was a young bochur then. I needed help with collecting items and so on. But the old book I wrote myself, and I was sitting on every word, Shiva Nekim, as we say, to make sure, because I knew it's a very sensitive issue. So every word was
Because you felt that the story should be told, but doesn't mean that we have to publish
right.
things that are not negaya for Chassidim,
Right.
whatever.
Things were not, and it turned out to be that when I made the book, after the book was published, a lot of people told me, "Why didn't you come to me to interview me?" But the truth is, when I tried, they didn't want to.
Right.
So a lot of people, they didn't want to be interviewed. And I took most of the things that I took was not from interviews. I mean, Zalman Gurari gave me an interview. What was interesting with Rabbi Gurari, when he gave me the interview, he said to me, "I will tell you why am I even talking to you." And he said that once he remembers in a Yechidus in Tavshin Yud, the Rebbe told him that there has to be that you have to make a sefer about this time. The Rebbe told him that, and he totally was not understanding it.
Right.
Totally didn't. He didn't understand what did that mean. Who should make a sefer? Why to make a sefer? And it was forgotten. And when I came to him, he said to me, it came back to him how the Rebbe
So you're
said.
Pasha Mechav to the Rebbe's Rasim.
I didn't. I had no idea. Not like I.
That's what they call it Mechav.
So I had no idea. So that's why he said, that's why I'm talking to you. He told me a lot of things that I couldn't even put in the book, very special things. But he was, but he gave me a lot of information. And then David Raskin gave me a little bit of information, and Rabbi Mentley gave me a little bit of information.
But it's mainly from the letters from Yale and from
Mainly from letters and from
Gross.
Yoman. Yeah, mainly from the letters, and also Rabbi Mentlik gave me information for the Tshuras. He already passed away, Memches, but for the Tshuras, he gave me information, and some of the Tshuras I reused them for later for the book. And then also Bochur, who passed away lately, his mother had a recording from Leibel Groner when she was a youngster in Visrivke, and Leibel Groner
in
gave her all.
probably Machachana.
In a Mochana Visrivke, and Leibel Groner gave the whole history of Tavshin Yud when he was still young. It was either it was in the Chavs and the Lamed, I think the Lamed, and it was very, very interesting. It was like all 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So I took it down. I wrote it as if it's an interview, but it was really a recording from him. And so, and a few things that he said, a few special things came out later, documents that actually supported that, but the Rebbe himself wrote. And anyway, so later, the last 30 years, huge material came out, new material that I did not see. But all the material that came out is only supporting the line that I took in my book, the way I did it.
What's the line?
That right from the beginning, literally from the first few weeks, the entire majority of Anash around the world was already glued to the Rebbe.
So
that is the truth.
We don't need to get into the whole thing, but
right.
Basically, everyone knows that there was a shaila. So I think historians or whatever people that they want to say it wasn't so simple. There was this camp and there was that camp. And I mean, I read the book, obviously, but I also by a lot of people, myself. I mean, it's a klar zach. There was no movement. The only movement, a real movement, maybe there was a yechidim, a hinaher, but the only movement that existed, probably from day one, you think a few weeks, I'll say from day one, is that the Rebbe, it's klar that the Rebbe is Rebbe.
For sure, from day one. For two examples, one example I wrote in my book, but the one example Meir Alik just told lately, was a very interesting example. By the Polish Chassidim, there is a custom that at the funeral, after the they make an announcement who is the new Rebbe. By Chabad, there was not such a custom. Chabad usually took a year or more. But the concept, the Rebbe always says, the Bo HaShemesh v'Zoach HaShemesh. The second, the Instalkos.
The Rebbe explains about Beis Nissan. The Rebbe...
Right. So
the Beis Nissan is the yard site, whatever the Stalkos of the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe always
explains
it. The Rebbe's book, that business
Right.
is Haschals and Asiyas. So the
Right.
Frierdiker Rebbe.
So
Yeah.
the same thing happened by the Rebbe. Marshall, a few examples I have in the book, and a few examples I heard later. One example that is, for example, that Reb Zalman Goy told me that Shabbos by day, the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away in the morning, Shabbos morning. 2 hours later, the Rashad was holding the Rebbe's hand and walking with the Rebbe, crying and saying to the Rebbe, "What's going to be? What's going to be? What's going to be?" And the Rebbe calmed them down. And they were going back and forth in the hallway in the Frierdiker Rebbe's house. And the Rebbe calmed down, everything will be okay, everything will be okay, we'll continue. And another story that happened, that's in the book also, that there was a one from Anash who was supposed to have a L'chaim party. He became a host of the L'chaim party. Motzei Shabbos Yud Shvat Tov Yud.
Yeah.
And he didn't know what to do. What should he do? The Frierdiker Rebbe just passed away. So he ran to 770 and he saw Reb Shmuel Levittin. He was the authority. So he went to Reb Shmuel Levittin and said, "What to do?" Shmuel Levittin said to him, "Go to the Ramash. Go to the Rebbe." So right from the beginning, the Rebbe made the decisions. And the most interesting story that happened by the Levi that came out, so one is in the book, that when they took the Frierdiker Rebbe down, the Rebbe said loud that we're making a t'nai, we make a condition, that we are putting you here only in t'nai, that if we will go to Israel, then we will take you with us. That's one thing that he saw, that the Rebbe led everything. And the second thing that Meir Alec told the story lately, that I never knew before, that there is a custom that you put the sand of Eretz Yisrael in the casket and in the grave. And so B'shaz they wanted to put the sand, the Rebbe said that the Frierdiker Rebbe does not need Israel sand. And someone of the family started screaming, "No, we should put, was woo." And the Rebbe said, "If my husband said we don't need, so I'm with my husband." And why the Rebbe, and they didn't put. So the Rebbe led the Nesias from Rebbe right from the first second. And why they didn't put, why the Rebbe didn't want to put, because the Rebbe said in a sicha, the famous sicha in Tovshin Yudalad, Yud Shvat, and the Rebbe explains what's the difference between an oil, what's the mile of going to the oil. The Rebbe says that in Eretz Yisrael, because there was the churban there, so the etzem is not begilui there. There is the etzem of Elikus is there, but it's not the essence of Elikus is there, but it's not begilui. There is the churban, and where the churban was. That was give the mashal, the parable, when there is a wall, a big wall, and falls down, so the stone on top of the wall falls the lowest. So in Eretz Yisrael there's no gilui.
Falls the farthest.
Falls the farthest. So therefore, the Eretz Yisrael there's no gilui.
By the Rebbeim, there's no
because
no
they
churban.
but like the Rashbi, it says by no churban. So by the Rebbeim, that's the place where the etzem is begilus. So therefore, the Frierdiker Rebbe does not need the offer. It doesn't need the sand from Israel, but that's where the golus is. But the Elikus is not begilui. Whereas the Elikus begilui dafke by the Eir, so that he doesn't need the sand from Eretz. But you could see that the Rebbe led from the first second. That his Nesias, the Rebbe was the Nasi, and his decisions were made, that was absolute. And not only that, especially within days, I mean, like Rabbi Dubov, that's in the book, Rabbi Dubov is the one, Rabbi Dubov from Manchester, he's the one who asked the Rebbe the day after the Istalkas, or the day of the Istalkas, he asked the Rebbe to take over the Nesias. And the Rebbe said to him, "What do you think?" The Rebbe said his name, Memshin is a Rebbe. And then a week, when he went back to England, and he went to Rebbe Shem Tov's house, and together he had a meeting with him, and he sent a telegram to the Rebbe to send the seeds, and the Rebbe wrote back, the Rebbe wrote to Ben Shem Tov, "I'm sure that you heard what I told Rav Dubov, and he was here about this." But anyway, all the information that came out, you could see clearly that my line was true.
I think it's connected to what you said before, where you were describing what it meant to be by Rebbe. So after Yud Shvat, all the people there saw this right away. So it's not a shaila.
They actually saw it before. Maybe I told you many years ago, Rabbi Norman Lamb, the president of Yeshiva University, came to visit us in Alaska. He came for a tour here. He came with his wife and his sister, and I took them on a drive to a mountain here, a special place. It's called a special place here in Alaska. And then on the way back, then we went back from down to the mountain, and there was we had like a smoke. The car was smoking, so we had to stop the car to
Hamalek
wait.
Shluchim had
Yeah,
smoking
to
cars.
wait, to wait, to wait. Even though it was actually a very nice, good van, a big van, but
Stammet today,
something
your car doesn't smoke. I'm
wouldn't do
assuming.
that. Yeah. Anyway, so we stopped the car, and the two ladies were sitting with Mendy, with my son Rabbi Mendy from Masila. They were sitting with him and telling him stories, and I hear how, and I was talking to him, to Rabbi Lem, and I hear as the ladies are telling Mendy that they remember they used to be young girls in Crown Heights in the 1940s, and they remember when the Rebbe came to America. And I remember the Rebbe used to walk in the streets of Kingston. So the two ladies, she and her sister, two ladies, they tell my son, and how everybody came out of the houses to look at him. He looked like a prince.
Hmm.
They said the beauty of the Rebbe, but it's not that. It's exactly what the Rebbe Tzimchana writes in How Yaman, in How Memory. The Rebbe Tzimchana writes that when the Rebbe was a little kid, everybody was joined to look at him, because there was that shine that came from him, that it was inhuman, it was beyond humanity. It was a spiritual shine that came that caught everyone's eye. It's like when Moshe Rabbeinu saw the burning bush, and it says that Moshe Rabbeinu turned to see what is it, because he saw something, a snare neukal. He saw something which is not natural. He saw a non-natural scene. That was the Rebbe. When you saw the Rebbe, you saw something which is not normal. It's not human. This is not a normal thing. I still remember how I saw the Rebbe Yom Kippur by Mincha the first time when I was a little kid, Lamedvov. And I still remember the Rebbe sitting down and taking off his hat and sitting down.
And then it became a Tanila.
I became a Tanila. And I still remember to like now, I remember seeing the Rebbe's feet. And something you saw, it's not human. You saw something not normal here. And I remember I barely davened that Yom Kippur. I was holding the machzor and looking at the Rebbe. I couldn't take my eyes off the Rebbe. And I remember when the Rebbe jumped on the chair, the Rebbe was, when Tav Shilam and Vov, the Rebbe was 74 years old. And the Rebbe jumped on his chair and turned around. I would not be able to do it today. I mean, it's like unbelievable. I remember I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. The Rebbe jumped up on his chair and turned around and started jumping. And he jumped, and it's a soft chair, and he jumped on it, and he was making that. It's like, you have to understand, it's like, it's not, you saw Bemuchash, I was a little kid, I was like, wow, this is not, you felt it in your bones. This is a Likus. You felt that this is, I always just tell my Balabatim, anybody who saw the Rebbe had no doubt that there is a Eibishter, because you saw a Likus. You saw that there is a God in the world. You know, people who didn't see the Rebbe maybe could have doubts, but people who saw the Rebbe have no doubts. You know that there is a Eibishter in the world, because you saw a phenomenon which is beyond human nature. You saw this is Moshe Rabbeinu. You saw this is the chain of Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, the Oves Heino Merkava, and this is Moshe Rabbeinu, the Alter Rebbe, Rashbi. You see the Rebbe, Baal Shem Tov. You saw the Baal Shem Tov in our own time. I remember something about the farbrengen, the long farbrengens, Shabbosim. I used to stand by the farbrengen. I used to stand. Some years I had my place on the top of the benches, so I was very high. I was like the same height of the Rebbe's bima. But because the Rebbe was sitting, I was staying.
Your place was directly across from the
Directly
Rebbe.
across the Rebbe, yeah. So I remember some of them, when it was long farbrengens, it was like getting close to the end of the farbrengen, and I was already tired. And you're listening for like 5-6 hours. You listen to every word, to catch every word, understand every word. And sometimes I took like a second to breathe, and I looked just on the scene. I still remember that scene. You see the Rebbe sitting, because when I listen to farbrengen, I close my eyes to understand. But so I took that second just to watch it. And I still remember that scene.
Sometimes you didn't look at the Rebbe when the
No,
Rebbe spoke.
I looked at the Rebbe, but a lot of times I would close my eyes to understand. And I was into what the Rebbe is saying, but sometimes I took the moment just to watch the scene. And this was a scene like you literally felt the light on the Rebbe's, on the Rebbe. Like there was, and it says in the Gemara that there was a Shechina Aleim, You felt it. It's not stam. You saw something unusual. It's like that scene of the Rebbe sitting there and farbrengen. It's like it's out of this world. So of course,
What
it's the fact that we don't have it is a huge crime against humanity. That's a huge crime against the Jewish people. There's no question about that. It's the Chumla Bayis. I mean, to me, Gimmel Tammuz is Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. Gimmel Tammuz is Tisha B'Av. Of course, it's a crime. It's a Bunah de Beis Hamikdash. There's no question about that. It's a chum. There's no question about it. It's a chum. But if the Rebbe decided to do it, if the Eibishter decided to do it, there must be a reason. There must be a mission. And there must be a mission, and that mission must be fulfilled. And we are in that mission. And the Rebbe is with us. The Rebbe is like making sure that we will fulfill this mission. And nobody is out of this mission. Everyone must be part of it. And the Rebbe is going to Israel. And we see clearly, we see if it's about Israeli politics, if it's about Afot Sayados, if it's about the Shluchim all over the world, the way the Shluchim today are accepted, it's just, you can't compare the way we are accepted today in Alaska in comparison. Like the person who built the Chabadas in Fairbanks, he's the person who built the Reform Temple a few years ago there, 30 years ago. The same person who built the Reform Temple, he's the one who built the Chabadas. It's like things like that, you couldn't even make them up. 30 years ago, they will never happen. The person who built the temple will build the Chabadas. You're crazy? You can't even imagine that. But this is happening today. Like there is a ma'apecha, there's a revolution in the world, and the shaykhs that the shluchim of the Rebbe have today, with the entire leadership of the world leadership, with presidents and kings all over the world, the personal connection that we have is beyond words. I mean, it's not only about Israel. We talk about the United States everywhere. Look what Rabbi Levi Shem Tov just had the prayer in Washington, and the president was standing out. He was the first one to get the prayer. I mean, things like that happening today that we couldn't even imagine. Look how the Hiskashrus in Binyanei Ummah now, what they have now every year, 100,000 Jews are coming to Hiskashrus. Things are, the people are coming to the oil. I mean, I had here last summer, I had a group of ladies from 5 towns, and one of them is the daughter of a very, very famous Jewish activist. I don't want to say the name, like one of the top Jewish activists in America. And she tells me that she and her friends, they go every Motzei Shabbos to the oil. And not only that, she says to me, sometimes I have a friend who WhatsApps to everyone, I'm going to the oil. Anybody wants to join? And we jump into the car and we go. I mean, it's like, I wouldn't believe it. Mother Orthodox woman. I mean, I would never dream could happen.
over here, I don't have to ask people. They ask me. Let's go.
It's just like unbelievable. It's like you can't even imagine. Who would thought Gimmel Tammuz that this will happen the way it will look like today? Nobody dreamed that this will be.
Yeah.
But it shows you that the Rebbe's Koyach, and so obviously, I mean, there's no question about it that what we saw, of course, it's a crime. It's. I mean, when I look at my grandchildren and they go to the oil, I mean, my heart is breaking. I mean, when I see bochur who do not have the opportunity to stand by the Rebbe's farbrengen, you know what it means to be by the Rebbe's farbrengen. One farbrengen, not to have the farbrengen that we had every Shabbos. One farbrengen. But from the other hand, I see, I mean, what you said before about the people telling you about the Darer, I see it myself. When I listen now to farbrengen from the Rebbe that I was there, I see a whole new depth that I never even understood b'shas I was standing there and I listened to the first time. I see a whole new meaning. Mm-hmm. In every farbrengen, I see how the Rebbe is leading to a certain goal that I never even saw then. I looked at the more kasha, teretz, question and answer. I didn't understand that there is a whole. Even as much as I understood then, now it's like, and I see it in all different ways. It's like, oh, the Rebbe has a mahalach that he's leading the whole world. All of his talks and all of his farbrengens are all leading to the same nekuda, and in different ways. And how the Rebbe is like ain't safe. He's infinite in his. If it's whatever biurim that he has on Chumash, if it's on Chassidus, if it's on Nigla, the Rebbe is ain't safe. There is and all the churros are coming out with the letters from the Rebbe, with the minds from the Rebbe. It's endless. It's a lifetime. It's not enough to even to cover, just to read the Rebbe's text, not even to understand, not even in depth, just to read, just to listen to all the farbrengen. Josh Gordon, they say that the Shliach, Rabbi Gordon, that he listened to all the farbrengen from the Rebbe.
Yeah,
And
when
he
you're
took
down
his
his
walk.
walk.
I mean, I listen to farbrengen. It's like there is nothing, there is no biggest pleasure in the world than to listen to farbrengen from Rebbe. The Reichkeit, the Geschmack, the strength, the emunah you get from that farbrengen is like unbelievable. And it's such a oitzer that the Rebbe gave us, such a gift that the Rebbe gave us. And the Rebbe actually meant it. It was bechavona that should be recorded. The Rebbe had a special. I remember not too long ago. I saw the Rebbe said. The Rebbe wrote about listening to the recording from his farbrengen.
Yeah.
There was an old plan in Kfar Chabad, and the Rebbe said to listen to the recording of farbrengen also here in New York. There was, and the famous story that the Rebbe said by almost one of the last rallies, Tov Shinun Aleph.
They should send the
Rebbe said to
videos.
Rabbi Mishulovi to send the video to Russia, and the Rebbe said by the sicha, the Rebbe said to the children that there are kids around the world who cannot be here.
Right.
But when you will make with your hands and you'll say with a chayes, they'll see the Levitic pictures and they'll see the
Levitic pictures.
they'll see the picture and then they'll also have the chayes. And the Rebbe said to him to send it. And when there is also the video from the Gvirim, when a Gvir comes into the Rebbe and it says to the Rebbe that his business is in videos, and the Rebbe says, "Have you seen the video that we made Hanukkah? You saw the Jews in Russia were dancing together with the Jews in Russia."
They're dancing around.
It's like, so they see it. The Rebbe was like saying to him, "We know about videos, and we are in the business of videos. We and because the Rebbe emphasized, the Rebbe put the koyach in the video, in the picture. I mean, the Rebbe himself wrote a famous zettel about a woman who wrote to the Rebbe that she has a chlish, and the Rebbe wrote that she looks at the Rebbe's picture, b'tuch shamiti you, the Rebbe's emes, therefore he looks back on you, and that gives it. So the Rebbe beferish says that the picture. And the Rebbe told Moshe Harrison to carry a picture in his pocket. The Rebbe said many bochur to carry a picture.
In the Befrat and Tafshin Yud, the Rebbe was telling people, and then there's a Ksaviyat, Tistakel, but Munasi, Shachak, Mechad Murakam.
Yeah, so there is Veferish clearly that the Rebbe said that the picture and the video are the koyach.
Yeah. Okay, Rabbi Greenberg, this was a very, very geschmack and uplifting conversation, and Mizal Zayin, we are already big Chassidim. We should become even bigger Chassidim.
Amen. We should all be zeicher to fulfill the Rebbe's rotzen, and we should be zeicher to see the Rebbe b'muchash. I think we missed one important point.
Yeah.
We have 1 more minute. One important point that we should talk about it, and that is the concept of what is the inyan for Mashiach and Chassidus. I think it's
Go ahead.
I think it's very, very important for people to understand that, and that is that. I just want to say one line, and the Rabbi Yoel had a big koch in that line, and that happened Tovshin Yud Beis by the famous farbrengen of Shabbos after Pesach, Shabbos Shmini Tovshin Yud Beis, and the Rebbe asked the Chassidim to sing the nigun of the Gimmel Tammuz, the nigun of the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid the Alter Rebbe, and the Rebbe asked the Chassidim. The Rebbe was in a mirdike giloi, something unusual. The Rebbe took a lot of l'chaim, and he was in a huge mirdike giloim. And the Rebbe said to Chazer the Gimmel, the Tnuah Gimmel, the third Tnuah of the Alter Rebbe, to Chazer again and again and again. And it was such an amazing farbrengen that after the farbrengen, the Rebbe stood to Mincha, he continued singing the nigun to himself. It was unbelievable. And then the Rebbe said, why is the nigun so important? Because that is from the Alter Rebbe. And he was mamshich, he was a neshama chadasha, a new soul. He was mamshich anayis from Atzmus. He was mamshich something, a new gilui from Atzmus, and he was mamshich to the deiras after him, to the generations after him. That the Alter Rebbe was mamshich. He brought to the world a new gilui from Malakus to the generations after him, and that's based on what the Frierdiker Rebbe told that several times erev Rosh Hashanah in the last years in America. The Frierdiker Rebbe said. He said to when the Alter Rebbe came the first time to the Magid told him, that the Baal Shem Tov told him, that when the Alter Rebbe will come, you should tell the Alter Rebbe that he is a neshama chadasha, that he is a new soul, and he has a special mission to bring a special mission for all the generations after him, until Bias Mashiach, to bring Mashiach. So what is the new soul? So people thought that the soul never came in a Gilgal, but that's not true. As the Rebbe says in Chayel Tavshalamid Gimel, and Rabbi Yel also wrote it in the Chassidus in Orem, where the Rebbe speaks about the Neshama Chadasha, that the new soul means what the Alter Rebbe is talking in Kodesh Shir Hashirim. But there it says that the Arizal said, and the Rebbe said it many times by the Sichos, that Arizal said that all the Geluim that were in Elam Hazeh from Adam Arishim till Mashiach are all from Chitzenius Atik, and Mashiach is Primus Atik. Just to say in 2 words, what does that mean? That everyone knows about the Esespheres, Chacham bin Adas. Above the Esespheres, there is Keser. What is Keser? Keser is Rotzen and Tainik, which is Atik and Arich. Atik means it's netak, it's beyond, above, away from everything, and Arich means it's comes down to the world. So in Keser there is pleasure. Pleasure is the highest level, and there is Rotzen, which is the will. So we have Chochmah, we have intelligence, and in order for us to do something, we want to. What do you want to learn? You want to learn something that you have a pleasure to learn. So whatever you do in life is because you have pleasure. Because you have pleasure, you want to do it. And when you want to do it, you start learning it. And that's how it goes. So the Seder goes, there is Keser, there is Atik and Arich, Tainug and Ratzon, and then there is Chacham bin Adas. So the Arizal said that all the Giluim in Elam Hazeh are all from Chitzenes Atik, from Atik itself, the Chitzenes and Primus. So Chitzenes Atik. But when Mashiach will come, will be a Gil of Primus Atik. And that is the Gilei Atzmos. Because in Atik itself, the Chacham bin Adas of Atik, that's the Gilei Atzmos. So the Baal Shem Tov, the Arizal said, there are 2 kinds of neshamas. There is neshamas, which are the neshamas from Adam Arishon till Mashiach. Then there is the Neshama Chadasha, which is the neshamas from Mashiach. That's the Neshama Chadasha. So the Baal Shem Tov said to the Magi, to tell the Alter Rebbe, that he is a Neshama Chadasha, that he is a Neshama from Mashiach. And therefore, what is Chassidus? Why is Chassidus a Chonet to Mashiach? And the Rebbe said in Chassidus that Mischora Neida Meuso, that what is the reward for Afot Samayonas Chutzo, bringing us a Mashiach? There we know that what is Chassidus, because everything starts with Torah. In order to have, because everything starts with Chochmah. So before you bring Mashiach in the real world, you bring the Torah of Mashiach, the Chochmah of Mashiach. And then that refines the world to have Mashiach in the real world. So that means, and the Rebbe said it in Chayel Mit Gimmel, all sicha, so that the nekuda, what I'm trying to bring out is that the entire Chassidus Chabad, why is that so unique? Why is our Rabbeim so unique from all the other tzaddikim in the world? Because our Rabbeim from the Alter Rebbe on, and going every Rebbe, because every Rebbe is a Malam Mokim of the previous Rebbe, and as the Frierdiker Rebbe said, the Rebbe Rashab said, the Frierdiker said about the Rebbe Rashab, Nishmosei bi, that his Neshama is in me, and the Rebbe said it about himself in Purim Tov Shin Aleph. So all the Rabbeim are the same Neshama from Mashiach, and each Rebbe has a different sphere that he added to that, and the Rebbe's Sphere Samalchus, which is Eile Hadakesa, which is the highest level, and the Rebbe's mission as Der Shvi is to bring that Gilu Lakus with Chassidus Chabad, to bring it in reality in Elam Hazeh.
So why did you? I'm saying, why do you want to share this? What's so important?
I'm sharing it because it's important to understand what's the connection of Mashiach with Chabad. What's the whole issue with the Rebbe of Mashiach? Why is it so important to the Rebbe of Mashiach? And what's the connection, Dafke? Why Dafke the Rebbe spoke about it? Because this is what Chassidus is. Chassidus Chabad, what's unique of Chassidus Chabad? When you learn Likutei Torah, you'll see things there that doesn't say anywhere else before. The Tanya, Norman Lem said, Rabbi Soloveitchik, Rabbi J.B. Soloveitchik said that the greatest philosophy of all the philosophies is in the Tanya, in Tanya. That's what Rabbi Soloveitchik said. From all the philosophers, including Aristotle and Kant and all of them. So that means that the Chassidus Chabad is a new thing, a new Gilu Lakus. It says when Mashiach will come, to be Teros Shel Mashiach, Teres Mashiach. That is Chassidus Chabad. Therefore, it's so unique. Therefore, when you spread the Mayonis for Chassidus Chabad, you refine the world. You start with Teres Mashiach and you bring the world to Mashiach reality. So therefore, the Rebbe, for example, the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya. What was the Rebbe's campaign? To print the Tanya. In every city. Why the Rebbe gave a gift the other fleece in the Tanya. Why he didn't give a Maiva for the Filik Rebbe? If he didn't want to give a Maiva for himself. The Shnat HaShmoini, the Rebbe gives a gift. What's the gift? A Tanya. There again, Tov Shemem Dalet, again a Tanya. Tov Shinun, again a Tanya. Yud Shvat Tov Shinun, a Tanya. Teskis on Aleph, again, I have 4 Tanyas on the Rebbe. Why Tanyas? And what is in the Tanya? There is all the Sharblat from all the cities with the Rebbe in the Tanya. Why we have to see? If you want to give a class in Tanya in Alaska, you could take a Tanya from New York, what's bring them? But you have to bring a Tanya in Alaska. But the idea, the Rebbe said, it was explained, that the idea is just like when there is a Tanya from New York, or a Tanya from Kfar Chabad. So everyone knows that Kfar Chabad is a source of Tanyas. That's a place where you print, or we did a Tanya from Vilna. Then we know the Vilna Tanya. Vilna was a city where you have a printed. So that means Vilna or Kfar Chabad or New York became a source, a Mayan, where you print Tanyas. So the Rebbe said he wants every city, that the unit from the Rebbe is to bring a Lekus, the matter begashmias, that every city becomes a source of Tanyas. Anchorage has Tanyas, Fairbanks has Tanyas. Every city becomes a source of Tanyas. That's bringing the Lekus down in the reality of the world. And that's the Rebbe's mission, the Deir Shvi. So it's not like just happened to be the Rebbe spoke about Mashiach. It's not just happened to be. Because that is what the all Rabbeim, it's all the
and also, not only it happens to be, it wasn't like I saw this lashon that's like the Rebbe's personal wish, it's like Rebbe's gewalt, like no,
it's not the Rebbe's wish. This is what the entire
whatever, or the Rebbe's personal campaign, right. Or like
it's as if the Rebbe was a tzaddik and he wants a Mashiach. It's not just the Rebbe was a tzaddik, he wants Mashiach. Of course the Rebbe was a tzaddik, he wants Mashiach. But it's much more than that. This is what Chassidus Chabad stands for. Yeah. To change the world and bring Gidul Lekus in the world. That is what Mashiach is. And the Rebbe Deir Shvi, his mission is to bring it to reality. So therefore, what we are after Gimmel Tammuz, we are the Deir Shvi that brings Mashiach in reality. Therefore, there was a Stalkas. Because that's the final Makeh Bepatish of us as people who can see the Rebbe, that we see the Rebbe from within us. That's what the whole idea is, not to see the Rebbe from the outside of us, but see the Rebbe from within us, to find the Rebbe in us. So that dafke, because we are in a shvere, because we are Chassidus, because we don't see the Rebbe, we are broken about it, therefore we find the Rebbe, and that's what the inner for Mashiach. So it's not stam. The inner for Mashiach is the Yiseidas. V'amud hachok was of ganz Deir Shvi, of ganz Chassidus Chabad. The Alter Rebbe was Mashiach, and the Mittel Rebbe was Mashiach, and the Tzemach Rebbe was Mashiach. They're all Mashiach, and the Rebbe is the Mashiach B'Poel, because he is the Sfiras HaMalchus, he brings the Mashiach B'Poel. So therefore it's so important to remember that all those sichos of the Rebbe at Mashiach, and especially sicha from the last Kinus HaShluchim, where the Rebbe said that the entire Aveda is to bring Mashiach, that's Kipshutei. The entire work of Shlichus and all the Mifzoim, and to teach, as I said before, a Purim Chavches, that when do you know the Mashiach is coming? When you reach the Avdim and the Nidochim, the lost Jews and the faraway Jews in the end of the world. So everyone, now it's coming summer, people go traveling. You travel and you find a Jew somewhere in a gas station and you put on tefillin with him, that will bring Mashiach, because this is the Nekud of the Rebbe to find the Avdim and the Nidochim. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Chaim Levracha, very, very, very good. And some signs and the Sichos Kodesh, and that's it.
Amen.
Right now.
The Korah Mamish.
Dalai Golus.